Yeah, we're off. Hi, guys. No, that's not good. Come on. That's the one. Turn this down. This on. Hey, Diane. Hi, boss. Hi, guys.
TV. Thank you so much for joining us. You can see that we have Brett Height, from Outdoors, and he's returned to very kindly talk to us about CERN right here on the Doug and Dave Intel Report. You see my broadcast partner there, Doug Thornton, and you don't want to get in an arm wrestling match with him, but other than that, he's just a real nice guy. But we're going to talk about something I think is really important and not very well understood, and that's CERN. And I hear all these rumors. I hear satanic rumors, teleportation rumors. And listen, I'm going to be learning right along with you guys because we have someone who knows quite a bit about this, Brett Height. I'm so glad we could do this show because I think this is probably of major stuff. This is probably the least understood.
Thanks for having me back on.
Our pleasure.
And Doug, you too.
Thanks for being on, Brent.
Well, Brett, where do we start with this inquiry? Let's start with why it was built, why they said they built it, and why you think they built it. I bet it's not the same thing.
Yeah, you know, this whole concept started way back. You know, we've mentioned this is CERN. CERN is an acronym that, and my French is not that good, but it's French words that mean the Organization for Nuclear Research. So that's what this started out to be. And the concept was brought up at about 1951. It actually became a reality in 1952. And so we're just now being concerned about CERN, but this thing's been in existence for over 70 years.
Is this guy's name Dave, Diane?
So one thing I want to say that a lot of people don't realize what CERN is, but a lot of people don't realize that the World Wide Web came from CERN. Also, they created the World Wide Web in order to share information among different countries. There's 185 countries that have contributed money to this project over the years.
Oh, Dave Hodges, his name is. I don't know anything about him, Diane.
And I think I looked up the other day, I think there's about 205 countries in the world. And so, you know, a vast majority of them have contributed money to this. This means people's tax dollars have been dedicated to this project from all over the world. So why did they create this, or why did they start this? It was to study the unknown. It was to study stuff on the nuclear level. And then it ends up that they start colliding protons and neutrons, and it's particle physics is what it is. It's a study of particle physics.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
That's interesting about the internet, because I thought I had learned that the internet was developed by the Army as an alternative form of communication in case of a nuclear attack.
They're not the sole creators of the World Wide Web, but a big portion of the World Wide Web came from the interest in sharing this information among countries.
Okay.
So currently, what implications are there for CERN that we should be concerned about?
Let's see, where do we start? First of all, this is a European startup project that's gone global, and so they are they openly admit that there's the possibility that they can open up other dimensions. I mean, this is something that's openly discussed even on their YouTube channel, and there's a need for them to recreate the Big Bang is what they're trying to do with this thing. They want to recreate the Big Bang because they believe that the Big Bang happened and that's what created the universe. And so they believe that if they can recreate that, then they can better understand matter and different particles and how the universe is made up.
So, to your knowledge, with recreating the Big Bang, obviously it has that huge pipe that goes in what? Is it a mile or more than a mile?
17.
It's actually
circumference?
the largest one is actually 27 kilometers, which is roughly 17 miles.
Yeah,
and it's underground. And the reason why it's underground, it's 400 feet underground to be exact. And there's two main reasons why it's underground. One of it is the cooling factor, because this thing generates nearly 14 tera electron volts electricity, which is the most electricity that's ever been used in any machine known to man.
Wow.
And so this is a massive amount of electricity, so it takes a lot of cooling, and being underground helps it cool. The other reason why it is underground is they take advantage of the ground current. We have current that runs through our Earth, and
he's talking about ley lines, I think.
There's the Earth are different magnetic points coming from the North and South Pole. We have connection points on the Earth. But the thing that they can really take advantage of, and this gets into talking about the sun, but when the sun throws a solar flare, it's called a coronal mass ejection, a CME. This solar flare is actually an electrically charged plasma filament. And when this filament releases, it's not always Earth facing, but when it is, we have instruments out in space that can tell us if we are going to get an Earth facing blow from this coronal mass ejection. This coronal mass ejection is made up of electrically charged plasma particles, and it hits the Earth atmosphere at an enormous speed. And when it does, it supercharges the poles and makes the ground current maybe 10, 12, 20 times stronger than normal. So since we have satellites that can detect when this is going to happen and predict when it happens, it's beneficial for the people at CERN to turn on their magnetic instruments that they have that forces the protons through the underground tunnels, and at a precise time they can get a supercharge by the sun hitting the sun's solar flare hitting the Earth, because it makes the ground current that much stronger. Now, a negative of that is, as it is, when you're running 14 tera electron volts, or almost that, you've got a current that's you create a magnetic field. The magnetic field is actually 100,000 times stronger than our Earth's own magnetic field. So when you crank this thing up and you take advantage of that solar flare supercharging the ground current, then you've got a power generation that can actually pull in or implode our electromagnetic field around the Earth.
Hey, Phil, good to see you, mate.
Then you create a hole and you allow radiation to come in, harmful radiation to come in on the Earth. And so that is why some people believe that whether they're doing it directly or not, this could lead to weather modification and or possibly earthquakes.
Do you think the underground need for this is based off of Nikola Tesla? Has anyone ever came out with that? You know, Nikola Tesla had the ability to transfer energy underground. from one transmission station to another. Does CERN have a capability like that, or was it based off that in any loose way?
Yeah, I think so, because there's several pictures you can pull up on the internet, and there on the site there is a dome much like what the Tesla Tower was. It's shaped much like that. So I think they're using some of that technology, and I think they probably got some of their ideas from his research.
Well, the question I have, if they can open up dimensional portals, can they use it to transport as well? Humans, inanimate objects?
I think that's something that they want to explore. They discuss, and when I say they, CERN has a website, and they have you can actually monitor when they're operating and watch their meetings, and they even have a YouTube channel. And so they talk about the possibility of a parallel universe or parallel reality, and whether or not that we can actually teleport or tap into or open up other dimensions that are running parallel to ours. Some of this may seem like science fiction, but they're actually experimenting. I mean, we got 185 countries donating money to this project. This is the biggest machine ever built on the man that we know of. There may have been something in another time. The book of Ecclesiastes tells us there's nothing new under the sun. So something, to me, this kind of reminds me of a modern day Tower of Babel.
How was that?
I think that's pretty good. I agree with that too.
Mm.
It's just that whatever Babel was something that God didn't want, and the people had become too knowledgeable. They got a little bit big for their britches, so to speak, and God put a stop to it. And to me, it seems like we are experimenting and messing with things that we should not mess with. They discuss dark matter. Some people think that it's a possibility we're using enough power in this thing. It's a possibility that we could create a black hole, which wouldn't be good because we could get sucked right into it. A black hole can suck in light. So the mass of the earth would be nothing to be pulled through a black hole. Some people claim or theorize that it's a possibility that by using this much power that we could create a black hole and endanger ourselves.
One of the things that I've read about Einstein's, I think, Rosen bridge theory, is that if you open up a portal to a different dimension, you can actually, it's like pulling up the rug in time space. And if you were to go into it, let's say in a craft, you could actually come out the other side of your universe by duplicating the process where you're at.
Mm.
Kind of like a Stargate in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Has there been any discussion of that?
I've heard discussion of Stargates. There was a movie Stargate, and it's really similar in looks to what this picture is behind me.
I agree.
So, I'm sure they're experimenting with the possibilities. Back years ago, we experimented with things that gives us the modern things we have now, like cell phones and televisions and computers. And I think this is something that they're experimenting with now that's going to either give us new instruments in the future, or it'll bring to our destruction. That's another thing. At this facility is actually in Geneva, Switzerland, just west of Geneva, Switzerland, and part of the big loop that we talked about, the 17-mile loop, part of it's in France, and part of it's in Switzerland. And so the significant thing about this is they built this site on the former location of the Temple of Apollo. Now, why did they do that? I don't know, but some of their, like when they do their magnet change, I've watched them go through 3 or 4 magnet changes, and what they're doing is they're upgrading so they can move things faster, and these magnets help them move things at a faster pace. This thing's operating when these particles collide, they're colliding almost at the speed of light, not quite, but almost. And so they've upgraded these magnets several times in order to accomplish the speed. And when they get ready to reopen, sometimes it takes 2-3 years for this magnet upgrade to take place. And when they get ready to open up again, sometimes they have like a ritualistic pagan type dance performance that goes on before this.
Okay, we know where this comes from. Let me go biblical on you for just a moment.
Okay, let's go.
If you were to believe that Satan's goal is to destroy humanity,
Mhm.
and he wanted to get the soul, but he couldn't, then CERN might be the device that does it. Enact a black hole, poof, humanity's gone. You know, big middle finger to the Lord and his prized creation.
And I failed to mention, not only did they build this on the ancient site of the Temple of Apollo, but also they put a statue of the god of destruction, which is Shiva. It's a Hindu god. They put a statue, and Shiva is said to dance between the portals. Well, this statue is the picture of the god Shiva, and it's actually dancing in a fiery portal on this.
The dance of Shiva.
So I think there's paganistic elements involved in this, and I've even asked the question: is this how they are going to? Is this the key to open the bottomless pit?
I think it is.
There's even been some talk that the last time before the last magnet change that they actually there's been people admitted that they did open a portal and they could see entities on the other side. Now, how true that is, I don't know. That's rumor that I've picked up on the internet. But you know, the fact that they are experimenting and they are actually talking openly about the possibility of opening other dimensions, certainly could lend itself to the fact this is something demonic.
Yeah, Vast, I'm on the same page with you there, mate.
Yeah, one of the conspiracy theories is that CERN could actually shift the world into an alternate timeline by creating these microscopic black holes, and I guess sending Earth through that, putting us in another timeline, or while in the void, we would actually be in another dimension.
And there never would have been a Jesus.
Right. So that could erase the fact that we had a savior. You know, there's a lot of focus on dark matter is what they study a lot on this. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with this dark matter, but they have discovered that it exists and they've given it a name. Excuse me. And they've even discovered a new particle that they actually dubbed the God particle. So
Higgs boson.
Yeah, right. So so what are they considering the God? You know, is that the God of the Bible, or is this their God? You know, what are they trying to prove with this? And why would so many governments of the world agree to contribute to this project is one question I have. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Same thing. Doug, what do you think?
I have a theory on this whole thing. According to what we used to be able to do back in the Bible with opening up portals, obviously there's plenty of different references in Scripture telling you not to do stuff like that.
Right.
I think we have lost this innate ability, or art is one crazy thing that I read. And also this has to do with sorcery, witchcraft.
I did hear that, Vast. I did hear that, mate.
And the ability to open up portals through necromancy and all this other stuff, we've lost that. So hence what's behind you takes such a large amount of technology to recreate what beings used to be able to do, or people who had the ability to contact these beings used to be able to do. Scientifically, it kind of makes sense that it would take this much infrastructure and technology to recreate something without going paranormal. But we know that the Nazis were able to do this through necromancy. We know that in the Bible it says don't do necromancy. So necromancy was a real big issue, especially for thousands of years. So, and it seems like with this, CERN just grew and grew and grew in the immensity of the project. They had originally it was over here in Texas and then over there in Switzerland. They got one that's in China. I think that's the Small Hadron Collider. And I don't know who it is, but there's a proposal to build like a 30-mile in circumference Hadron Collider. It's like the Super Hadron Collider or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and this is just, my surmise of this, eventually we're going to have a big mistake. That's the scientific method.
Both of you have said that now. Both of you have said that.
You're going to push the experiments until you get a big mistake.
Right.
And what does that big mistake cause? Because we know that it can cause tetraquarks. It can cause the Higgs boson particle to appear. But one of the things that I've always said would be probably the most nominal is that you could actually explode the entire thing. What's the chances of the thing just exploding?
Well, there's definitely enough power there to have a major catastrophe. But one thing that I have thought of, the Bible speaks of something hitting the earth that's called wormwood. It's in the Revelation prophecy, and we've had there have even been movies made called Deep Impact, or different movies about comets or asteroids colliding with the earth. My thought has been, this thing has such a magnetic pull when they turn this thing on. If this thing can collapse our magnetosphere for a time period, and then we know that the moon and the different planets, they take a lot of impacts from space debris, from meteors and comets and stuff. And those impacts that they take is part of a system, I believe, that was designed by God to keep these things from impacting the earth. The moon takes the impacts rather than the earth. So what if they crank this thing up and we've got such a magnetic field that we've created that instead of the moon taking the impact of some of these meteorites, that we pull them into our own atmosphere? What if we pull wormwood into the earth one day? What if that is the reason why this wormwood prophecy thing hits the earth? It's because we pull it in with something like this. Now, that's just a thought.
Well, if it creates giant magnetic fields, could that possibly, and I'm just throwing this out there, could that possibly attract a celestial body? Like a meteorite, like an asteroid?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We could actually pull one into us that wouldn't have otherwise hit us.
Wow.
If we would have left the systems that are in place alone and let them work the way God created them to work, then it wouldn't have hit us. But now that we've created this thing, we could be attracting this stuff towards us.
Well, if I'm correct, the other planets in the solar system, like Saturn and Jupiter, their large mass pulls in a lot of dangerous, nefarious meteorites, comets, asteroids. That, at times the trajectory, because I'm a nerd, I look at stuff in NASA every now and then, but the trajectory would actually be right at Earth, but because of the large mass of the other two bodies of Saturn and Jupiter, it actually takes it off of its trajectory and then bends it or turns it in a different direction. But if we were to create enough of a magnetic field, to create enough of an attraction of force, you're saying, that it could actually straighten out that broken arrow path of a celestial body and aim it straight back at us, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And also these other planets have moons also that acts in the same way. A lot of us have looked at the moon through a telescope. There's all kinds of impact craters on the moon. So other planets' moons play a role in that too. And if we alter that system by creating a giant magnetic field, we could dodge all the moons and all the planets and pull something big straight into the earth and have an impact here. And according to the Bible, that's going to happen one of these days. Now, we don't know if this will cause that, but it's a possibility, I think.
My mind's going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Let me start with one thing. Teleportation's already happened in 2011 in Leipzig, Germany. They transported an inanimate object across a large laboratory from one side to the other. Brett, do you know about that one?
Yes, I've heard about that.
Okay. So that could have
Geez, they've done their thorough research, haven't they, guys?
been an outgrowth of CERN and they tried it in a regular environment. That would be my guess. The other thing that, and I'll go back, you mentioned Stargate. Stargate had a TV series that lasted 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really well done in many regards. And in the TV show, they the enemy in the beginning were called the Gaul, and they were an infestation parasite that would jump into someone's body and overwhelm their will.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you how I take it with regard to this. If this is demonic at all, and it can channel evil spirits, I got to tell you, the Stargate TV series covered Stargates. It's obvious. It covered perhaps demonic infestation through what I just described.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm wondering here is, could this be a channeling device to bring in demonic spirits that will jump into bodies or overwhelm them? People become demonically possessed in large numbers. What do you think?
I think that's a possibility, and I think these television programs are established and played on the air in order to condition us, to get us ready for some of these things to become a reality. So like I said at the beginning of this, this concept about CERN has been in existence for 70 years. If us, the common people, are just now discussing our concerns with it right now, how far have they advanced in 70 years? And, what do they already know that they have yet to condition us to accept? Go
ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, we're pretty far behind this from 1952 to now. We're just now having concerns and airing it now and discussing this. But, these people have had this in their mind for 70 years. And
Well, I can tell you why. Quantum physics, when Tesla's work was taken by the FBI and they had the Philadelphia experiment, all that stuff, Tesla was all about quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
And then yet Einstein on top of it was singularity and so forth. What I think they did is that they bifurcated science. They kept physics, and this is what my father had told me, they kept physics on a three-dimensional level that they taught to people. And then there was the quantum physics they wanted to work on because they knew that's where the real power was. Right. But they wanted to keep it from the general public. The thing they couldn't control is
Vast, that's why I do the secret space program stuff. I think we've got all this technology, but there is some frauds in the SSP.
15 years ago, regular scientists at universities began to discover, they got the quark, and then that led to a whole different, gee, could we get into separate dimensions? And then people like Michio Kaku came along and wrote a book and said, I can mathematically prove there's at least 26 dimensions. And he talked about what the characteristics of each dimension would be.
Right.
So the science kind of developed on its own, but originally the powers that be wanted to bifurcate science and keep the rest of us ignorant. And I think this is why CERN was part of this outgrowth of quantum physics. I'll give you an example too. This kind of goes to my point. When Tesla died in 1943 in his New York apartment, the FBI came and they seized all his notes. And here we are all these years later, and they still haven't released his notes.
Right. And back then, people thought he was crazy, and there was no practical uses for the things that he was creating back then. But now we're using everything that he created. We're using cellular. We're using even he created radio. I think Marconi got the credit for it, but it was actually Tesla that created it. And
TV
and microwave and
radar, sonar. Yeah, exactly.
Radar, we're using all of it.
You know what he did in 1899 on New Year's Eve? He was in Colorado Springs, and he sent electricity wirelessly from Colorado Springs to the Capitol Hill area in Denver, which is downtown Denver, and he lit up a couple of houses.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to cover that up.
Right.
And then he got into trouble with Westinghouse and the industrialists when he said, I can power people's homes for nothing.
Right.
Basically 0 point energy, I think we'd call it today. And Westinghouse and the rest of the industrial says, oh, no, 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 no. We're going to put a meter on this and make money. And they ostracized him right into the Navy because he had nowhere else to go. And that's where he did the radar, sonar, and all that stuff. And have you ever looked at the Philadelphia experiment? Does that relate to this kind of technology, do you think?
I think so. I've looked into it. I'm not real familiar with it, but I think all this is tied together. And you know, this brings up a topic that I like to discuss and think about. You know, it seems as if all throughout history, and we may have discussed this when we were talking about pyramids, but earlier on a different show. But it seems like all throughout history, even go back to the book of Genesis, there's this character that comes up in Genesis named Tubal-Cain. Tubal-Cain teaches people how to make stuff out of metal. Yeah. You know, it's a new technology. It seems like all throughout history, even up until now, that we have some kind of character or person that introduces new technology to us and it advances to a different state. And, you know, Tesla, you know, sometimes I think Elon Musk is the modern day Tesla. You know, it seems as if they're just like during World War II, all of a sudden the Germans come up with all this technology that nobody else had. You know, just all throughout history, there's been somebody that's come up with new technologies, and it's bringing us to a place, I believe, where technology is just going to completely destroy us. It's been gradual over time.
Absolutely. I agree with you. My dad worked with captured German scientists, and he said they were hundreds of years ahead of us in the late 1950s when he began that work. And he asked them independently, one by one, where did you get this? Aliens. He said, did you ever meet them? And they said, no, but our commanders did. My dad says, I'm not so sure. I think it was probably demonic. Mm-hmm. And then I'll just speak to this real quickly here. And I've told Doug about this recently. I have a friend named Vance Davis who was in NATO, U.S. Army, NSA aside. He wore all three hats. And they were tasked with trying to unveil advanced technology, but they were told to use a Ouija board to do it. And they wanted no part of this. So they deserted and they became the Gulf Breeze 7. The Gulf Breeze 7 is totally misrepresented in the mainstream media. They ran basically for their lives. They were caught. This is H.W. Bush, late 80s. They put them in prison, but they knew when they went to trial, they would have discovery. They had witnesses that supported them. And so they just cut them loose. Mm-hmm. And they just said, no one will ever believe you. And I think they tried to channel this technology through the occult. Right. And then I met a guy named Bob Dean, who was the senior non-com at NATO. And Bob Dean confirmed Vance's story. He said, yes, we were looking at the occult to try to unlock a lot of Nazi technology, and that we feel that they used the occult to come to this. So my long explanation, sorry for this, but I wanted to come to this point. Mm-hmm. Do you have an opinion on the occultic nature of CERN, the satanic link? I mean, what's your thought on this?
Well, going back on what you were just discussing about World War II, let me go back a little bit. Prior to that, and I'll have to look at my notes, I can't remember the name of this incident, but there was a Roswell type incident that happened in Germany prior to the rise of Hitler. And some people claim that incident is what gave them the knowledge to come up with jet propulsion and rocketry and all the things that they come up with during that time period. And so it seems like it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It seems as there's a character or an entity that comes along somewhere and gives people this knowledge. Even Tesla, when asked where he got this, he would point to the sky up there. That's, you know, they ask him where you get this information. He'd say up there. Okay, so back to your question.
I'm good. Scrappy's in there. You want to say hello?
Are there aspects of this CERN project where they're utilizing occult type practices in order to bring about some kind of new technology? Like I mentioned earlier, there's ritualistic dances that they perform. They built this on a sacred pagan god site. Then they have another pagan god that's out in the courtyard there in front of this building. So I think that right there is a definite yes that tells us that they are, at least they're illustrating that there's other gods or other entities that they're tapping into in order to produce whatever it is they're trying to produce with this machine. You know, going back to World War II, Hitler was obsessed with talking to mediums or talking through mediums, communicating with different entities through mediums, and going all over the world trying to collect artifacts that may give them some extra boost in power or whatever. You know, so I think it's been going on all throughout history, and I think it's a great possibility that's going on now with CERN.
Yeah, I just wonder who's in control of CERN. I interviewed on my radio site today Stephen Ben-Nun. Boy, is that guy just an encyclopedia of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him what we had talked about before, and Doug and I have had this discussion many times, that I believe there's two DNA on the planet. One was from fallen angels, and I think this is why the royal family, for example, intermarried with each other and preserved this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was centered in old Europe with the Rothschilds, is
He's not a
my
big cat,
guess.
is he?
He's not.
And he thought there was legitimacy to that.
My
And I'm
girl's
wondering,
only
is CERN
really
is in
small.
Europe? It strikes
He's
me
the
out
size
that
of
it's
a
not in
panther.
America. And then I'm wondering who really if there are two DNA,
What do you
fallen
want?
angel DNA, human DNA, and the fallen angel DNA, people want to destroy the other,
What do you got for me?
and they're working with Satan. I'm wondering if
He's gonna follow
CERN
you,
could not
huh?
be an instrument. I'm sorry, this is where my wild imagination goes, Brent.
Well, you know, okay, Doug mentioned earlier there was a collider in Texas at one time. There's one in China. There's different places. And so I don't know what was the reasoning behind the Europeans coming up with their own organization, but it seems as if they experimented with this stuff in different countries, and at some point they all came together and decided that they had put it in its current location. I was going to mention this when we talked briefly about the possibility of weather modification. We also have a station that's like this. There's different stations around the world, but we call it HAARP, HAARP. It stands for High Altitude Aurora Research Project, and the one in North America is based in Alaska. And so this instrument is an antenna array that's spread out over a large area, and supposedly they can aim this antenna and shoot electricity, high amounts of electricity, just like CERN, except they aim it at different spots in the ionosphere, and they can heat up a spot in the ionosphere and create a bulge in it, and that can shift weather one direction or the other.
Wow.
Okay, so these things are all over in different places too. I don't know if they've centralized like CERN has, but this is where, you know, this is a big conspiracy topic, is chemtrails. But chemtrails and HAARP go together in that a lot of times the chemical dispersant that they put in the air is made of aluminum oxide and different kind of metals, and they spray these particulates in the air, and it makes the atmosphere more conductive for HAARP to do what it does. And
yeah, but also too, doesn't it serve Bill Gates' purpose of reflecting the sun?
yes, there's multi-purpose use for this stuff.
Wow.
But I think these things are kin to each other. When I say these things, I'm talking about CERN, talking about HAARP. They're things we probably shouldn't be messing with, and they're going to cause some serious problems one day if we keep on doing this, I believe.
So I have a conspiracy. Here's my little conspiracy. Before I get on that, I want to say this: the United States is not a member of CERN, but it's an observer state.
That's interesting.
So we can attend the meetings, but we can't cast votes. And so far, we've given $531 million to CERN. But the member states, there's 12 founding states. And that's Belgium, Denmark, France, West Germany, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and Yugoslavia. And since 2014, there's been 21 other countries to include Israel, Poland, and Finland.
Mm-hmm.
But we, with all these other countries, we're not a part of CERN. So if we're not a part of CERN, if let's just say America gets knocked out of power, okay, cataclysm, World War III, whatever you want to say, whatever your conspiracy flavor is. If we can't control or have a say, because technically we are the world police and we more or less have a say of what goes on in the world currently, if we have no ability to stop what's going on in CERN, CERN could harness the power of the sun through the CME. If you, and this is just what I've gathered so far. If you blanket the earth in a chemical that once electrons and protons and all that cool other stuff gets into the atmosphere, let's say CERN creates a big hole, and that's the only hole facing the CME at the moment. And here comes the blast. Well, all this stuff is going to be reflecting off of the earth, hitting the ionosphere where they're going to be doing the cloud seeding, which is really just capturing the heat. Okay. And you could really heat up the earth if you turn on HARP at the same time, you turn on CERN at the same time, you got hit by a giant CME. I mean, you got enough energy there to move the earth, like physically move the earth, change the axis. There's all different types of crazy stuff that I've been researching that a large CME event like a X-class 22 solar flare or larger could do.
Yeah, even
I mean,
polar
you could honestly turn off the lights on every single piece of electricity around the world. It could be like a blanketed EMP event if the wrong cataclysm happens. That's a bit of a stretch, but from what I've been reading so far, it's actually kind of a possibility.
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of possibilities that we open ourselves up to when we start messing with the natural protecting elements that we have, like our magnetosphere and our different layers of our atmosphere. They're layers of protection that protect us from radiation, protect us from impacts. And when we start altering stuff like that, then we're just opening ourselves up to disaster, I believe. There's a number of possibilities, but certainly what you just discussed is one of them.
Boy, what an interesting thought.
This is coming
that's
from
a really astute observation, Doug.
This is coming from science.howstuffworks.com, which is it's kind of sponsored by CERN, so it's like it helps deflect conspiracies from CERN. But what they're saying is, will the LHC destroy the world? The Large Hadron Collider will allow scientists to observe particle collisions at an energy level far higher than any previous experiment. Some people worry that such powerful reactions could cause serious trouble for the Earth. In fact, a few people are so concerned that they filed a lawsuit against CERN in an attempt to delay the LHC's activation. In 2008, former nuclear safety officer Walter Wagner and Louis Sancho spearheaded a lawsuit filed in Hawaii's U.S. District Court. They claim that the LHC could potentially destroy the world. Now, I would like to say that you can't just be the random crazy guy who says, "Oh, this is it's bad because I think it's bad, and I'm going to file a lawsuit, and it's something that's not even in my country to try and have it stopped." I'm sure they had a lot of evidence backing up this type of lawsuit, but this is what it goes on to say. What is the basis for their concerns? Could the LHC create something that could end all life as we know it? One fear is that the LHC could produce black holes. Brent, as you said earlier, black holes are regions in which matter collapses into a point of infinite destiny. CERN scientists admit that the LHC could produce black holes, but they also say those black holes would be on a subatomic scale and would collapse almost instantly. That's what they think anyways. In contrast, the black holes astronomers study result from an entire star collapsing in on itself. So they say there's a big difference between the mass of a star and that of a proton. Another concern is that the LHC will produce an exotic and so far hypothetical material called strangelets. One possible trait of strangelets is particularly worrisome. Cosmologists theorize that strangelets could possess a powerful gravitational field that might allow them to convert the entire planet into a lifeless Hulk. You want to go further with that?
If Satan's in charge, that does make sense.
But the scientists just dismiss this stuff. Like, that'll never happen.
Right. But we know that there's a push towards population control and things like that. It's evident, we can see it. And then you think about, okay, I don't know if you've ever studied any about, I'm sure you have, both of you have read about remote viewing. And in some of this,
a little bit. I know a little bit.
Some of this remote viewing, they discuss something called a kill shot. And supposedly the kill shot is a CME that comes from the sun or from some other place, maybe from even farther out in the galaxy, something that hits the Earth that just completely wipes out our electrical grid. Well, in the state that we are now, 100 years ago, people could live without electricity pretty easy, but now we use it to do everything, and we've become dependent on it. A large percentage of the population would die without electricity on Earth today. So, you got to think of the possibility if we did do something that altered our magnetic shields and allowed a kill shot to come in, this could be something that would greatly reduce the population just by the fact that the electrical grid went down globally.
Before you get discounted by critics in the audience, let me say this. I trained in remote viewing for a while under Ed Dames.
Okay. Yeah.
Ed Dames was the one that popularized the idea of the kill shot on Art Bell show.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you're talking about with a kill shot would come from something called a pulsar.
Mm-hmm.
And pulsars are rapidly rotating neutron stars that blast out pulses of radiation at regular intervals ranging from seconds to milliseconds. And then you also have things like quasars, magnetars, white dwarfs, and blazars. I used to know all this stuff back when I was smart. Now I've forgotten all of it.
Dave, you mentioned Stephen Bendanoon earlier, right?
Yes.
Okay. Isn't he the one that has discussed pretty extensively about the 5 waves of energy? And what Doug was talking about a blast of energy that's coming through our galaxy due to a pulsar that exploded long ago. Is he the same guy?
I think you're right. I think I've heard him talk about it years ago. My interaction with him, we do a roundtable on John Moore's RBN show on Tuesday mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeffrey Nyquist, myself, Stephen Noon. And so we're pretty much locked into the geopolitical world.
Mm-hmm.
Although we did discuss the fallen angel Genesis 6 deal. I know he's talked about something like this, but it's not something I pursued with him here. So I kind of have to say, I think so, but I couldn't tell you much about it because it hasn't been a focus of our interaction.
I think he's been a guest on Paul Begley's show, and I think that's where I've seen him talk about that, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go ahead, Paul Begley. You hit the nail on the head. Wow, you hit the nail on the head.
That makes a lot of sense that Paul would go there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways for CERN is that there appears to be positive scientific experiment that's going on there that could benefit mankind. And then there's obviously nefarious. It's nefarious when they're having dramatic scenes of occultic like human sacrifices. Yeah. You got strange gods sitting out there. For all of us Christians, we would say that's probably not a good thing to put out there. There's so many things that makes you think what is really going on here. But you can go to CERN. You have to request online from their website, but you can actually go to CERN and do an entire tour of the site for free. Right?
Yeah.
I think that would be one of those incredible things to walk through and to see, what mankind can build. But one of my questions is, where does it stop from there? Right. What else is it that we need to continue to find because once we find the ability to open up holes in space-time, how do we know it doesn't stop from there? Like, you know, with Elon Musk and a bunch of other world leaders, everything is about getting off world and going to a new planet, a new cluster of stars. You know, all this, you know, cool scientific stuff that me as a kid, I was super interested in. Who wouldn't be, right? But the dangers of that is, okay, let's say we don't open up a wormhole and it takes us to Mars faster. If you open up a wormhole to another dimension, or you open up a wormhole to, and I think from what this website from CERN is saying, that the ability most likely of having 11 different dimensions or more. Let's say we open up the wormhole, okay, and boom, now we're right into the dimension of where the gray aliens are that come and abduct people all the time, that our friend Timothy Alberino likes to talk about, or, you know, whatever. You have no.
I got his interview with Timothy Alberino next, guys, so that's coincidental.
Idea what is there once you pierce the veil. But if you entered a portal into hell, or the demonic portal, the Jacob's ladder, you know, and what could come out of that? Because that's the thing that I worry about. The scientists say, we know we can create a portal and something's going to be there and something's going to come out of it, and we're going to send something through it. Are we prepared for it, at your estimation, for once they open the portal, for whatever it is that's coming out of it? Do you think the scientists there are prepared for it? I mean, look, I'm not saying it's going to be a six-legged monster coming through the portal, though I think that would be entertaining. That's a little ironic. But I don't know what it is that they think would come through that portal. Have you seen any more discussion on that?
Not since a couple of years, I guess, is when last time I've heard some serious talk about that. But, you know, it's like opening up Pandora's box. I mean, once you open it up, you know,
Right.
you're not going to close it and put things back. So I think what we're going to do is going to be irreversible if something like that were to happen. So that's why I'll say again, we're messing with things that we should not be messing with.
You know what this reminds me of? It's the year 1984, and who are you going to call Ghostbusters? Remember how they messed with the realm out there, and then all these entities came through on the same night? But fortunately, we had Bill Murray to save the Earth. But I'm engaging in small hyperbole, but I'm kind of serious about this too. I agree with you. We could be calling into being physics effects that could be wipe out everything here. We could be calling in entities that would make our life a living hell, where the spiritual comes in the physical.
It's not satirical. Look at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah,
there is no ability of trying to open up anything from those dudes on that ranch who's just trying to observe everything. I kind of wonder, could what they're doing at the Large Hadron Collider affect what's happening at these ranches, where we get these poltergeist-like activities, where we get these supposed portals that are opening up with craft flying through it? Could we inadvertently be causing this every time we turn this machine on?
You know, yeah, and not only that, even if we don't bring in ghosts or goblins or demonic entities, we could be pulling in disease and different things from let's say a comet that's passing by that has some kind of disease on it that we're not, you know, we don't have any immunity to. We could pull something like that through you know.
Well, what you're saying is not really too far-fetched, because that's, I believe, called panspermia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if let's say you have a planet, okay, and this planet has had a devastating asteroidal impact, and then you have the, you know, projections of what's going out into the atmosphere, and that is carrying biological life on it. All right, that's panspermia. Right. Well, if this is the wrong kind of biological life that is very adverse to the, you know, I keep wanting to say the United States, Jesus, but that's very adverse to the world, and we gravitationally bring this thing into us. Well, you can actually go and see how NASA has studied that there are bacterial and virological elements of stuff that's in space, that's within our stratosphere. Mm-hmm. I mean, they got algae on the on some of the observatories that are up there. So it's very strange science, and I agree with you. I mean, you could potentially pull in a biological effect that we're not ready for because it's alien. We have no express views of how to actually contend with it. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's prophesied in the Bible as an end time prophecy is disease and pestilence. So where's this going to come from? It's either going to be, maybe it's man-made, maybe we're going to create it ourselves, or maybe we pull it in from another place. But that's that's a possibility because being biblical based, I believe that's prophesied.
I think there's no hyperbole here. It's almost like a recreation of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah. I think it's very comparable to that. They were doing something back then. We don't have the full story of what happened there, but they crossed some boundaries with God, and that's why He shut it down. And the Bible tells us that any weapon formed against us will not prosper, and I don't think this thing will prosper in the end. It'll either self-destruct or, God will come back. And it may not be this machine, but if we keep tampering with it and building new machines like this, when eventually we're going to cross some kind of boundary with God.
Well,
go ahead, Doug.
What makes me agree with you is that, the old adage, if you build it, they will come. Whatever Babylon or the Tower of Babel was, and the ability to communicate with fallen angels and other entities, if that is what this potentially could be, even though we may mean it for science-based and not for nefarious reasons, but the more we march towards revelation, the more we march towards the end of the world biblically, this machine could actually be inadvertently built for the fallen angels, for their means, and then harnessed and used, because the fallen angels were technological creatures. Mm-hmm. In my aspects, they were technological creatures. There's too much crazy stuff that's talked about.
Yeah, they came here to mine gold. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one of the things they did.
I mean, there's a lot of strange things there, and some people may beat us up in the comment section. Look, we're not saying
it's okay. That's all right.
Ancient alien stuff. We're just saying, like, you can't not talk about the wheel within a wheel of Ezekiel and go, oh yeah, it's just a wheel within a wheel. We're just going to skip over that verse and not apply technology to it at all.
Yeah, and the wheels had creatures that rode on them, and everywhere the creatures thought, that's the way the wheels move. So not only do you have technology, but you've got different entities that are described in that book. That's Ezekiel chapter 1, I believe.
We're just messing with danger. And I wonder if this is not what was meant in Revelations when it said that no one would survive, all life would end on the earth if Jesus didn't return.
Right.
I think it's obviously one of the things. I mean, that you don't build one of the largest technologically advanced instruments in history for nothing bad to be done with it.
That's true. Good
I mean, I know it has science-based applications, but everything has military-based applications.
Right.
Everything does.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but I would say this, Doug. CERN might be neutral, kind of like a gun. A gun can be used to hunt for self-defense, but a gun can also be used as an instrument of oppression and violence.
Well,
so,
I mean,
CERN could be the same way.
It says on their website that it is like neutral. There's 100 different countries that are involved in this. However, you mix in the satanic stuff and the occultism, and I throw neutrality out the window immediately.
I think there's people that's involved in the project that are strictly there for scientific purposes, but I think you've got some people in there that's involved with it with other things in mind also. I'll just put it that way.
Dave, with your dad's research and what he did, do you see CERN as a advancement in what they were doing?
Yeah, and I would say my dad would say it's along the lines of the occult, and I think Vance Davis's experience would kind of go to that point too. Yeah, I think so.
Well, Brent, do you have any more information on CERN?
I think we've about covered all that I had in my notes. If we get a lot of questions about this in the comments, we may want to revisit this topic and study up.
Yeah, we sure can.
Yeah, let me make that announcement. Look, in the comment section on here, if you have questions about CERN, we'll be able to hopefully answer anything that you're asking for. If not, we'll be able to gain the information and talk to the other experts. We're not experts in this field, but we are interested in it because obviously the world has interest in this type of device. So let's pay attention to the technological advancements. That way we're not caught off guard. But if you do have questions in there, you want to email them to us, you can email them. But I would rather that you leave it in the comment section so that we can create, a good working theory of what we think is going on there. And, if you got any cool articles or anything that adds to this information of CERN, please put it in the comment section below, So
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Brad Height, again, you never disappoint. This was very intriguing, and I feel like we're kind of in the middle of a book, but the rest of the book hasn't been written yet. I think there's more to be learned from this. But I want to thank you.
Hey, Talia, good to see you.
Coming on the CommonSenseShow.tv.
Good night, Phil. God bless, mate.
Thank you for having me, and I always enjoy being on your show. So,
listen, the privilege is ours. But for our guest, Brad Height from Outdoors. Oh, by the way, tell people how they can follow you.
It's Brad Height Outdoors. I started out doing all things outdoors because I spend a lot of time outdoors. But Doug and I formed a group with Mondo Gonzalez, the Paleo Research Group, and so we started researching some different things and we go and explore and we document this, and I put some of this on my YouTube channel as well.
Very good.
Brent Height Outdoors.
Brent Height Outdoors. Well, it's been our pleasure having you on, as we said. And on behalf of my broadcast partner, Doug Thornton, I'm Dave.
Okay, there it is right there. Pentagon claims there is an alien mothership in our solar system. Timothy Alberino and American Vindicta Show, the same guys.
Drac, are you coming? No, but dangerous uncomfortable.
Really, Drac? Let's bite back.
To reading comments on comments revolving around this story about the one that we're talking about tonight, this mothership, potential mothership, and then other stories regarding UFOs. There's the common, let's call it a recoil in the Christian community. I'm not here to bash the Christian community. I'm a part of the Christian community, and as are you guys. And I'm not here to bash Christians. I'm here to help people perhaps have a more expansive and certainly a more elastic paradigm, because as I often say, if your paradigm is not elastic, it's going to break when it's forced to bend. When it's forced to expand or flex, it's going to snap. It's the principle of you don't pour new wine into old wineskins, because the new wine will burst the old wineskins. And so the reason why this is so important to me and so relevant to me as it pertains to the body of Christ, as it pertains to Christians, is because I want people to have elastic paradigms. I want them to have paradigms that can be expanded, so that they don't break when they have to deal with realities that are not being contemplated currently. And so the recoil that so many Christians have when dealing with the UFO topic, especially if you're talking about extrasolar, and let's just set aside the whole flat earth issue, because that's one of the recoils, but it's not the one I'm addressing right now. The primary recoil is in regard to the notion that there are extraterrestrials or aliens, extraterrestrial / aliens, because they're really the same thing, operating in our solar system. And again, the recoil is this perhaps it's sort of an emotion. It's emotive in nature, that people feel the need to reject that proposition, or else they are somehow thinking in terms that are extra biblical. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
When in reality the opposite is true, as I've said many times. And so people will say, for example, no,
this is American Vindicta Show. It's not the Goslings.
just a deception. For example, in regard to this particular story, that's just a deception. It's not a mothership. There are no aliens. There are only fallen angels. I've heard that so many times. No, there are no aliens.
Wow.
There are no extraterrestrials. There are only demons and fallen angels.
But there were also
Well-
giants and satyrs and all over.
Well, yes, but that very
No.
that response is what's the nice way I want to put it here?
Unenlightened.
Well, it's certainly unenlightened, but it's you're also, I mean, that response is unbiblical in my estimation. Why? Because as we all know, and as I've said ad nauseum on interview after interview, not you guys, but with a whole bunch of other people as well, angels are, by their very nature, extraterrestrial and alien to the human species.
That's true. That's true.
That's it. I mean, period. So that's the first thought. The second thought is, I just lost the second thought. Let me return to the first thought and expand on it. So we know that, the second thought, it just came back to me. I need to drink a little bit more coffee. The second thought is that it's not aliens, there's only fallen angels. Okay, but why only fallen angels? What about like the good guys? What about the good guys? Are they just riding around in chariots being pulled by flying horses like Santa Claus with the reindeer? I mean, is that all they're doing? So why do we and why do we cut out the good guys out of the equation? Why can't they have a mothership? Why
Well,
can't they be traversing the skies
Let me ask you a question.
in advanced aerospace vehicles?
So what you're saying is that when you limit the enemy, okay, the enemy that is, when you limit them to only a paradigm of fallen angels, then you actually limit the capability and scope of Satan. You actually limit the capability and scope of devil, the father of lies, the one who can even appear as a minister of light, as an angel himself. And all of his little followers can, perform their own little miracles. When we say that they can only be fit into this one little square cookie cutter cutout that's been used for, at least 10, 20 years now, it's very, very popular that Nephilim, fallen angels, and aliens are all the same thing, even though the Bible really doesn't completely clarify that. You limit the capability and scope of a deception. And when we talk about it,
Well, certainly.
Exactly. That was going to be my response to everything that you
Right,
said, Tim.
right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I don't want to.
No, well, Doug and I've talked about this at length, and we don't know what the Great Deception is, but this certainly could fit into that paradigm. So for people to say there's only this or that, they're assuming that Satan would never engage in a great deception. So, I mean, that's naive at best.
Right. And I think, most people are aware that at some point there's going to be a deception. I believe that the deception revolves specifically around the person of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. It's going to be in regard to an imposter Christ, an imposter Messiah. That is the primary deception. The existence. Now, let me say this clearly: the existence of extraterrestrials and or aliens is not a deception. That is not a deception. That is a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
According to the biblical narrative. That's a foregone conclusion. Extraterrestrials / aliens do exist. We know that because of the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible. We know that. So I think, that's part of that expanding our paradigm that I think many of the listeners need to do right away. Is just expand your paradigm, because this is not an extra biblical concept. This is very much a biblical concept. Mm-hmm. Extraterrestrials / aliens do exist, and you can say, well, they're not from outer space, they're from another dimension, or they're from a spiritual realm. I don't care. I don't care about that terminology. It doesn't make a difference. It does not change the my statement. It does not change the verity of this statement. Extraterrestrials / aliens do exist. They do. So their existence is not a deception. So if we find a mothership in the solar system, that's not by definition a deception, because the existence of extraterrestrials is presumed. And indeed, I would go so far as to say that the existence of extraterrestrials in possession of advanced technology is presumed within the biblical narrative. And so we should expect to find something like that out there. I mean, I would expect to find it reading the biblical narrative and seeing the kinds of things that angels do and the kind of technology that they apparently wield. I would extrapolate then that these beings come from an advanced civilization that has locality and is located somewhere other than planet Earth. Therefore, it would not surprise me if the good guys as well as the bad guys are operating advanced aerospace vehicles. And why not have a mothership? I mean, exactly as this article says, that's what we would do. That's what NASA does. I mean, if we had the capability to explore our solar system, we would have a mothership from which smaller ships would deploy. That's exactly what we would do. We would send out probes and so forth. And so I don't think any of this we should resist this automatic recoil at the notion that these might be extraterrestrials. So what if they are?
Yeah.
Again, I think we should expect that scenario to unfold at some point, or to become enlightened to that scenario as human beings, that there are other sentient beings in the universe, especially as Christians who are familiar with the Bible. And so right there, that alone, if you accept that what I just said, then you're not in danger of being deceived by the existence of an extraterrestrial or alien. There's nothing deceptive about the mere existence of a being. The deception is going to come when one of these beings, in my estimation, is going to proclaim himself the Messiah, the second coming of Jesus, something of this nature.
Okay, I was wondering where he was going with this.
It's going to revolve around.
And I didn't start this from the beginning, did I? I don't think so.
Our pets can be a handful, but we love them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And we noted in our conversation about that, we noted that the nomenclature of UFO was being sort of brought back, picked up out of the mothballs again, and put back on the shelf, because that has not been the preferred term.
Hey, Bobby, good to see ya.
By the news agencies. The preferred term is, of course, UAP. It was interesting to me that they were trotting out the UFO, which is the appellation that I prefer. I don't like the UAP denomination for various reasons. So it's interesting that this is following sort of in a sequence of events. It's important to note right off the bat here that Sean Kilpatrick previously served as the chief scientist at the Defense Intelligence Agency's Missile and Space Intelligence Center. That's where this guy comes from, who wrote the article, who wrote the article along with Abraham Loeb from Harvard University. So these are serious dudes who wrote this article. This isn't, this isn't a couple of fringe guys. These are very serious individuals. And this is a draft, an AARO report draft entitled "Physical Constraints on Unidentified Aerial Phenomena," which I think is a provocative title, and it makes me wonder what the whole report is actually going to be about.
Yeah, what's the term "physical restraints" mean to you?
I have no idea what exactly they're going to talk about in this report, because physical constraints, that would indicate to me that they know something about this aerial phenomena, that they can at least begin to define perhaps some of the physics involved. I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Physical constraints to me sounds like something that they can now measure and put into data and analyze. And if you can measure something, put in the data, analyze it, then you can produce it and reproduce it. And at that point in time, if you can find a physical constraint on an object, then you could then start to match trajectory, length of time before it approaches another celestial object like another planet. I mean, we're talking about scientific descriptions now of objects, their mass, the movement. You know, to me, it sounds like they're tracking something.
Well, we know they're tracking something. As you mentioned, Abraham Loeb, who's the chairman of Harvard University's astronomy department, again, a very serious individual. He gained notoriety when he proposed that our solar system had been traversed by its first extrasolar visitor in October 2017. And he means an artificial visitor, not just a meteor or something like that, or rather a comet or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so, according to, again, the chairman of Harvard University's astronomy department, we already picked up an interstellar UFO in 2017. It was moving in a way that suggests that it's an artificial phenomenon, this object that they detected. So that to me is very, very interesting. I would be curious to know what other kind of data they were able to derive from this object, because it's a big deal when you have this caliber of guys coming out and making these sort of jaw-dropping announcements. And again, this follows, forget about the balloon stuff, and let's go back to 2017, when not only did they track this
one can be
extrasolar object in our solar system. That's also when the Pentagon released, that's when the New York Times broke the Nimitz incident story, which I think was a leak from the Pentagon. So,
yeah, totally.
So it's those two things coincide. So it's very interesting.
I'd like to throw something out though, and then I don't think this is the case, but I think we have to consider it. The Chinese spy balloon happened when things were heating up with Hunter Biden's laptop. So some people said distraction. I have a document here. It's called OP 1670 from the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and they're already talking about freezing assets. And this failure of the bank I knew about 2 days before it happened in Silicon Valley. And it's a big deal because it's the bank used by most of the big tech. Mm-hmm. And 90% of the assets were not insured, which is going to be the case across the country in all banks because the FDIC is insolvent. Could this be another distraction based on something like that?
It could be. It's always possible that these kind of things are distractions. Certainly the balloon incident that happened a couple weeks ago was a distraction, not just from Hunter Biden. There's several things going on. Don't forget that derailment over in Palestine, Ohio, which was a much bigger story than I think anybody even has contemplated yet. But so certainly it was being used as a cover-up, and that I think was our analysis of that scenario. This, although that could be the case here, I think this circumvents what happened a couple of weeks ago in my mind, even though it seems to follow in this sequence of UFO chatter. I think this is more connected to what began to happen in 2017 with the Nimitz incident leak. This seems to be a more serious situation that is real, and that is, it feels to me, this is just part of the ongoing attempt of the Pentagon to control the narrative around UFOs, because the phenomenon is burgeoning and it's becoming more and more apparent and to some extent hostile. In fact, let's not forget that the A-
They haven't sorted that out, have they, Diane? That debt ceiling, that's still not completed yet.
ARO, the Pentagon's All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which was established in 2022. So it's a very new office, which was established to investigate unidentified objects of interest around military installations. That's the primary purpose of the AARO. So again, as I always say, what we have here is a phenomenon that's being talked about, that's being featured within the context of a national security threat. So this is what I mean when I say that the phenomenon is taking a more hostile posture. Because what's really got the Pentagon concerned is the heightened activity of UFOs around secret and known military installations. So that's sort of the subtext here to all of this.
Going on for several decades, though, hasn't it, Tim?
It has, but I think, as I said, I think that we're seeing an escalation in the phenomenon. In other words, the frequency is increasing, and to some extent, and I'm going to use the word hostility, the hostility is increasing. And by hostility, I don't mean that the UFOs are shooting lasers, are firing lasers at our military installations. Rather, it's an overt display of dominance, an overt display of technological superiority.
Why do you suppose that the Pentagon is briefing us on this and not NASA?
Because NASA's a dog and pony show, and again, this is and that's actually a really good question, Doug. NASA's a dog and pony show, number one, but number two, it's going to be irrelevant soon, because of Musk and because of Branson and because of Bezos. But the reason why the Pentagon is breaking this rather than NASA is precisely because it's a national security threat. NASA doesn't deal with national security threats.
No, they don't.
NASA deals with space exploration. The Pentagon deals with national security threats. So again, this is the context. Everyone always has to keep in mind, what is the context of this rollout, this soft disclosure rollout? The context is unequivocally a national security threat. And there are some ufologists who
I might finish with that link. When I hang up, I'll do the last half hour of that link from the one you just sent me, the Prophecy Watch.
Respect, who seem to want to reject the notion that this is being cast as a national security threat, but to me, it's so obvious that that's what's happening here. And I don't think, by the way, and we can delve deeper into this if you want to. I don't think, by the way, that this is a ruse or a deception. I think what we have here is a genuine phenomenon that the Pentagon has no control over. The only thing that they can control is the narrative. That's it.
Well,
they cannot control the phenomenon.
Let me ask you this question, because in their statement, they say a artificial interstellar object could potentially be a parent craft that releases small probes that would have a close passage to Earth, an operational construct not too dissimilar from NASA's missions. So NASA, obviously, this is science and research and exploration. They are not what we would call a military entity, though anything in space is a military attachment. There's no way around it. If it's in space, it belongs to the military. So the Pentagon is the one who's laying claim to this. And if they're laying claim to it, like you said, then there has to be a, quote, threat posture at some point in time that they're observing or monitoring. But what do you think this statement means? An artificial interstellar object that could be a parent craft, that could be smaller probes. And here's what I'll say. The Oumuamua that they had documented in 2017. Tell me if this, if the size of this sounds wrong to you. They said that Oumuamua was a small object estimated to be between 100 meters long to 1,000 meters long. That's quite a difference, okay? and that it was between 35 and 167 meters thick. That is an aircraft carrier or bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Flying in space. Yeah. I mean, if you look at any of our aircraft that goes into space, they are not 100 meters long. The spaceships are not that big. So, we're talking about something of a tremendous size for human comparisons. This is tremendous size. So,
I saw this big round thing like the Death Star on Star Wars. I saw this big round thing siphoning energy off the sun, and it was bigger than Jupiter or Saturn, whichever the biggest planet is. It was bigger than that. It looked like that Star Wars Death Star. It really did.
Let's not forget about the Phoenix Lights craft, which was
That's right.
also tremendously large and hovering and almost hovering. It was moving very slowly over the Phoenix area, and that is a positive UFO sighting. That is not a speculative sighting. It has been positively identified as an actual UFO. It was some sort of an artificial craft. It was not obviously not natural phenomena. It wasn't flares or swamp gas or anything, or any of these other stupid, and sometimes a lot of sightings do turn out to be flares, by the way, but not these legitimate sightings where you have hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of witnesses. And even the mayor of, I forget his name, of the city at the time, came out and said they knew that it was an artificial craft. And for some reason, I don't remember if he was under duress to do it or not, but he came out and made a big show of it and made fun of it.
That was Governor Symington that did that.
That's right. And later on, he apologized.
Yes. He embarrassed Frances Barwood, a Phoenix City Councilwoman who exposed this at the Phoenix City Council.
That's
meeting.
right.
And she said, I'm only asking what my constituents are asking.
That's right. And he came in dressed like an alien or something.
They vilified the hell out of her.
Yep.
Let me tell you, I saw the Phoenix Lights, by the way. I was living in the city at the time, and I was out shooting baskets at night with a porch light on. And I'm looking out over and I'm thinking, what the hell? And everything went quiet. Shadows appeared where no street light. It's crazy. And the official explanation, though, Tim, this was the official explanation initially. There was no craft. There was no nothing. It was fireworks and other light phenomena from the Illinois National Guard south of South Mountain. Now, as I looked parallel directly from west to east when I saw the craft, and it's going to get to South Mountain where they made this bogus story, it had to travel another 15 miles. There was no way this was what they said it was. That was the initial explanation. Now, at the time, I was actually teaching a college course at Luke Air Force Base, and I had a radar operator in my class, and I said something in class about, well, let's hope we don't get invaded by aliens now. And this was after the event. And the radar operator came up to me and says, you never can ascribe this to me, but we tracked a craft on radar the whole time. He said it's not what they're telling the public.
A very, very large craft. I mean,
he thought it was 2 miles long.
2 miles long, that's right. And so, this Harvard, the chairman of the astronomy department at Harvard is talking about an interstellar mothership. But what about the Phoenix Lights? What about the 2 mile long craft over Phoenix, Arizona, just a decade or so ago?
Yes.
So we're way beyond. Yeah, we're way beyond a mothership in our solar system.
Yeah, but they didn't want to acknowledge it. So I want to use that as a springboard to come back to what we're saying here. I am shocked that the military is being forthcoming about this supposedly interstellar craft that's entered our solar system. And the reason I'm shocked is because I've seen how they've handled every other incident like this, except that incident off the coast of California in 2017 with Commander Farver. I just wonder what's their purpose, because they would rather lie to us than tell us the truth. That's their history.
Well, I don't deny that that's their history, but in this case, as I said, most cases when they lie to us, they can control the circumstances, at least to some degree. They have some degree of control over the circumstances. They can, not only can they craft the narrative, but they can also mold the scenario that's unfolding, for which the narrative is crafted. In this case, they have absolutely no control over the phenomenon. None. And I think that scares them, number one. And let's always remember that when I say them, we're talking about two distinct groups at the Pentagon. We're talking about the people who are sort of latecomers to the topic of UFOs, who are heading up these offices, and who are basically just saying things that ufologists have known for decades. Of course, these guys probably know a whole lot more that they're not saying publicly. And then there's the other guys, and maybe there's a little bit of crossover here too. The other guys are the guys that actually have access to the black budget projects that are being developed by our aerospace, the aerospace contracting companies like Lockheed Martin and many others. That's a different group. That's the group that has hands on the technology.
That's right.
That's the group that's in the business of reverse engineering alien craft retrievals, and perhaps even, very likely in my opinion, have had access to the biological entities and have done autopsies and all kinds of things, and perhaps are even interfacing with some of these entities. Those are two separate groups. There's probably some crossover there at the top, but there are very few, in my estimation. This is an educated guess based on my research and based on my and based on the compendium of good ufology that's been done over the decades. It's my estimation that there are very few people working at the Pentagon who have access to those black budget projects, much less even know, or who know about the black budget projects, much less have access to them, or even to the deep underground military base system that we have under the United States. So,
Tim,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Doug will know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into any detail, but I just want to ask you your opinion on the subject here. Guys,
I might just give this a break and do that link that Vast sent us about the Prophecy Club and something about this weekend, because it might have something to do with this phone thing. So I might check that out and come back to these guys. This has been pretty interesting so far, though. But let's check this out. You'll see what I mean when I get it. Stand Prophecy Club. Oh, I don't think I loaded it. Hang on. Where was it, Vast? Oh.
That's it.
Okay, I can't load it from here. So, Emergency This Weekend Prophecy Club. Hang on. Emergency This Weekend Prophecy Club. Yep, got it. Not load. There it is.
Information I'm about to bring you is saying, if you put Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is emergency this weekend. Now, I'm not saying that. That's what the information I'm about to bring you is saying. If you put it all together, that's exactly what it's saying. Now, let me just say, Ezekiel 33:6 says, if the watchman sees a sword coming.
Diane, I bet he was crushed when they took his Prophecy Club down. He must have got a third strike, and he lost 20 or 15 years of content, poor bugger.
He is to blow the trumpet. And if he doesn't blow the trumpet, then the blood of those people that were not warned is on his head. No place in there does it say that he has to guarantee that the sword comes. It's just that if he sees the sword coming, he's to blow the trumpet. I see a sword coming based upon the information I'm about. I see a sword coming, so I'm doing my job by warning you. Now, is it going to happen? I can't guarantee that. I'm not God. But I can guarantee you from the information, if it's accurate, and it comes from two credible sources, that apparently the emergency we've been talking about arrives this week. And I hope you're ready. Okay, here we go. Headline: U.S. government planning for total cellular outage. I've got another article on this too. U.S. senators were all just given satellite phones in case something happens where they cannot use their cell phones. We've been talking about this, a blackout that comes out, and my guess is, this is just a guess, based upon all the information that we've all run across and researched, apparently they're about to do the switcheroo. Apparently, this is my guess, they're about to bring in the CBDC, the digital currency. And it may be, I can't rule out the possibility, that the internal revolution is about to happen and we're about to see massive arrests. I hope that's what happens. And it could be that in that process, they shut down the cellular network and they take over all other communications and start playing that 24-hour loop. Actually, it's an 8-hour loop. They play it 3 times a day, 24 hours a day for like 10 days. I do not know. I'd like to know. I do not know that that's exactly what's happening. However, well, let me go on. There's some credible reasons to say that. Or perhaps it's a case where government already knows that they're going to be taken down cellular. High-level U.S. politicians will be vacationing. In other words, they're going off to be protected. Will be vacationing the Memorial Day weekend with their families at various undisclosed continuity of government locations. That's where they go when they're expecting a nuclear attack. I don't think the nuclear attack is coming. I think that it's something else. It may be that the bad guys are running from the good guys. Again, I just don't know. But I know that apparently something's up. Friends and family members are saying their friends and their relatives are bragging about some super secret vacation in some kind of government bunker facilities. And people are supposed to be at the destinations no later than May 27th, 2023. That's this weekend. I'm not saying that. This one, I'm about to show you another source says. Something so unnerving that they want all people, assets, and dependents to be at their locations by Saturday. Now, This is CBS News. It's part of the conspiracy. Senators issued satellite phones offering demonstrations on upgraded security devices. Amid growing concerns of security risks to members of Congress, more than 50 senators have been issued satellite phones for emergency communication and recommended the senators keep them in close proximity during their travels to ensure a redundant and secure means of communication during a disruptive event. What does that sound like to you? It sounds to me like something bad's happening. And remember, they have a time machine. They have a looking glass. They can see into the future. They know it's coming. So it may be that they're preparing for what they cannot stop. A security backstop in the case of emergency that, quote, takes out communications in part of America. Federal.
Do you know what, Diane? Deep down, I don't believe in pre-trib either. The Bible says we're here till the Battle of Armageddon, and they can twist it any way they want. They sort of nearly got me, but with mate, I agree with you. I don't think it's pre-trib. I think it's post-trib.
Funding may pay for the satellite airtime needed to utilize the phone devices. A tool for responding to and coordinating government services in case of a man-made. This is CBS News, okay? A man-made or natural disaster that wipes out communication. Could it be that a lot of these things that we've been talking about coming that have been delayed, could it be this is about to be the trigger? And there's more. BlackRock. Now, I can't say enough bad about BlackRock. If I start telling you all the bad stuff about BlackRock, they will take me off. Those are the bad guys, okay? BlackRock takes big stake in Sprott Silver PSLV ETF, 20.6 million shares. What does that mean? Okay. This is one of the 3 wealthiest organizations in the world. I believe that they are probably part of the people that say, like the World Economic Forum has said, by 2025, no, it's by, yeah, I guess it was 2025. Maybe it's 2030. I'm not sure of that. You'll be, you won't own anything, but you'll be happy. Okay, well, how are they going to get all of this land, the cars, the car lots, the houses? How do you get that all out of our hands? Could it be that BlackRock knows that there's about to be a big switcheroo on the currency? Could it be that they know that coins and paper are about to go away, and so they're putting their money in silver? Now that PSLV, what that means is physical silver. Okay, they're not investing in silver notes. They're not investing in a silver mine. They're investing in actual owned bars of silver. And now, maybe we should think about doing the same thing. Let me say it again. BlackRock is taking $20.6 million in physical silver. Now, that's kind of a problem for an institution that is just investing. Because if they're just investing, they wouldn't do that because they like to be able to put it in, take it out quick. But in that this is physical silver, it has to be physically moved, physically inventoried, physically, you got to put it in a secure location, got to hire security people. So there's a lot to them investing in physical silver. So when they have bought that much physical silver, are you listening? One person said, do as the wealthy people do. I don't necessarily always agree with that, but in this case, it might fit. The what is here? The tweet says, BlackRock takes a big stake in spot silver. While BlackRock has held its own shares, I'm going to skip on down. Doesn't matter if BlackRock holds onto PSLV, the institutional waterfall buying is coming. Now remember, and let me just give you this disclaimer. This is not an investment program. This is a Bible prophecy program. And I'm not giving financial advice. What I am doing is telling you back in 2010, when Shane Warren had the vision, and many of the things have already started to come to pass, he was told in an audible voice that silver is going to skyrocket far more than gold. Now, I think gold is going to skyrocket too. I think a lot of things are about to skyrocket because basically the dollar is about to go to worthless, or at least stepping that direction. So could it be that this big whatever it is actually brings the first step to the skyrocket of silver? If BlackRock is putting that kind of money in physical silver, and not investment, physical silver, obviously they know something. And here's another article that talks about, you can see right down here, how much they have bought and how many, compared to some of the other people, how much they own. In other words, they bought big time into silver. So if you're thinking about getting silver, I can't give you financial advice, but these people can. They're experts in it. They're Christians, they're prophecy students, they love Prophecy Club, they follow Prophecy Club, and it's cornerstoneassetmetals.com. You don't have to buy. When you call, you don't have to buy. Just call them, start talking. This is my situation. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I got. Here's what I don't want to happen. And then listen. Listen and consider their advice. Okay, let's move on. Red alert from the Daily Reckoning. Now, this guy did not openly say he's a Christian, but indirectly it sure sounds like he's a Christian, sounds like he's a prophecy, sounds like he knows what's going on, which is why I'm reading it. Investors look at the failure of Silicon Valley Bank on March 10th as the start of a new banking crisis. Yep, well, actually, it probably wasn't the start, but it's well on its way. But a closer look reveals the crisis may have begun over a year earlier, I think he's correct, November 2021, when Bitcoin started an epic meltdown. The price of Bitcoin fell 77.5%. Now, skip on down. You may say, so what? Well, if you don't own any Bitcoin, the problem is that financial systems, here it is,
Yeah, they've been saying that, Diane, haven't they? Gold stayed the same price for a long time now. So has silver.
Are densely connected even if the problems arise in crypto land. In other words, one domino knocks the other domino down. That's what he's saying. Bitcoin collapse led to a series of related crashes. In May 2022, the so-called stablecoin and a related Luna coin lost 40 billion in value. And he goes on to list other coins that lost a lot. The point is, we've got a couple of dominoes that have fallen. And those other dominoes are knocking over other dominoes, and it doesn't look like the dominoes are going to stop anytime soon. In November 2022 came the biggest crypto meltdown of all. FTX filed for bankruptcy. We all heard about it. And it may be the largest fraud in history. Next headline. Oh, actually, this is the next part of the article. Crypto contagion spreads to mainstream banking system. Finally, the virus of financial contagion jumped from crypto world to the world of mainstream banking. The carrier was Silvergate Bank, which announced its insolvency on March 9th. Then Silvergate comes along, member of the FDIC, and is also a crypto bank, and it made loans against cryptocurrencies and offered to buy and sell these cryptocurrencies for dollars. But now, the liquidity virus was infecting the U.S. banking system. And from there, the dominoes continue to fall. Here's a brief chronology of the mainstream banking failures since early March this year. Silvergate, Silicon, Signature, UBS, excuse me, First Republic. Okay, those are big dominoes. And those big dominoes are knocking over other smaller dominoes. The article continues. The current incoherence of Fed policy. He says regulators took extraordinary and unprecedented actions. He said the Fed is lending more than the securities are worth. This facility could.
It does say that. Throw silver into the street, doesn't it? You can't eat silver or gold.
Result in $1 trillion or more of newly printed money to make the loans. This money printing spree comes at a time when the Fed claims to be reducing the money supply as part of its inflation fighting. So the Fed is tightening and easing at the same time. In other words, the Fed's causing the problem. Janet Yellen has destroyed confidence in the FDIC system by blurring the limits on insurance offered and depleting the insurance fund. Again, heavy-handed intervention has its costs in terms of uncertainty and lost confidence. The system is blinking red. He says there's always warning signs of a crisis, which are mostly ignored. The warning signs today include, listen up, dollar shortage. We're not surprised. High quality collateral shortages to support derivatives, which made worse by the debt ceiling, which prevents new issuance of treasury bills. Inverted treasury yield curves, negative swap spreads, auctioned treasury bills, yielding less than Federal Reserve overnight reserve repo facility, and the flight of cash from banks to treasury bills and money market funds. I don't even understand all that, but I bet they don't understand the prophecies either. The watch list of banks waiting to fall includes PacWest, Western Alliance, First Horizon, Comerica, KeyCorp. In short, the system is blinking red. Now, we prophecy students, we've been watching for this for 13 years. These guys, unfortunately, are just now in the last few months starting to say, something's wrong. If they just listen to the prophets, they'd have a whole lot more advanced and more accurate information. The bottom line is that we're facing a severe recession. You think? That's just the minor part. Wait till the Russians attack with nuclear weapons. A financial crisis worse than 2008, de-dollarization, lost confidence in the Fed, and the U.S. dollar political repression through the rise of central bank digital currencies or CBDCs, which may be what is about to happen, but something's about to happen, and potentially extreme social unrest. The winners in this scenario are gold, which we've been recommending, silver, land, energy, agriculture, U.S. Treasury notes. Now, again, if we do what the people on the inside, the leaders do, sometimes when we follow them, it's a good idea. So I looked it up. This is the land that Bill Gates has bought over the last few years. 242,000 acres. Now, do you think that he has become just interested in farming? No. Do you think he wants to see that the prices are held down to the very best prices, the very best quality food for the American people to eat? No. Okay, so then why is he buying all of the land? Well, I personally think he's, I've never met him, okay, I've never met him, don't know for sure, but this is based upon what I read out there. Apparently, he's a pretty evil guy. My guess is he's buying all that land so that he won't farm it. It won't be farmed, and he can, by his own decision, cut our food supplies down. In other words, to see that we don't eat. So, be a good idea to have some food on hand, be a good idea to have some gold and silver on hand as we've been talking. As I've been saying, follow the money. Bill Gates and his wife are America's largest private farmland owners. So, if the elite are buying physical silver and land, what do you think that tells us that we might ought to consider? Next headline, The Club of Rome, how climate hysteria is being used to create global governance. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the setup of the world order, the new world order. The United Nations and associated globalist roundtable groups are hard at work developing a scheme to convince the population to embrace global centralization of power. Their goals were rather direct, and here's what they wanted. It's changed a little bit. A rationale for governmental control of human population. They want to control us. Limit industry, control energy, limit food production, micromanage individuals' lives. Individual right of property is abandoned. They want a one world economic system that may be what's about to be set up this coming weekend. One world currency, that would also be the same thing. One world government, but they forgot one world religion. But we know that's coming. One of the most revealing quotes on the agenda comes from Clinton administration Strobe Talbot, who said, in the next century, nations as we know it will be obsolete. I hope you're listening, it's important. All states will recognize a single global authority. It's called the Antichrist. He sits on the throne, everybody got to worship him. National sovereignty wasn't such a great idea after all. Well, it was if you want to be free. But it was a good idea for them because they don't want us free. They want us worshiping their God. Foreign Affairs magazine, 1974, entitled The Hard Road to World Order. In short, the House of World Order will have to be built from the bottom up rather than what they've been trying to do from the top down. It will look like a great booming, buzzing confusion. It's called Ordo ab Chaos, order, a new world order out of chaos. What chaos? A chaos they create. I'll back up and read that again. Booming, buzzing confusion, to use William James' famous description of reality, but an end run around the national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, will accomplish much more than the old-fashioned frontal assault. In other words, instead of trying to make a world government through bullet, we do it through confusion, through media, through lies and deception. And I'm going to conclude with this. Back in October 2012, we had Daniel Davis. He's a missionary out of, I think it's Costa Rica. He came and spoke to Prophecy Club. He made a very important, very powerful DVD called I Saw the Dollar Dead, which you can watch instantly at watchprophecyclub.com. You can also get the DVD for a gift of $30, but the better deal is $20 a month. You can watch 300 some odd DVDs for $20 a month.
Yeah, my mum won't use them self-checkouts because it's putting the checkout girls out of work.
Or $200 a year. And I even think they've got a coupon on now for $180 a year now for $6,000 worth of DVDs. Anyway, if you want the DVD, it's at prophecyclub.com. If you want to watch it instantly, it's at watchprophecyclub.com. I'd recommend it. You'll really like it. So in this dream, he says, I saw a man who looked like a government official, appeared on the big screens and began to make an announcement. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make. America, as you have known it, has ceased to exist. All property lines have been dissolved, and the US dollar is worthless." When the people heard this, they began to panic. Scene 2 of the dream. I was suddenly standing at a gas station convenience store. It had a high fence off to the side with barbed wire across the top. Inside the fence were tractors, power equipment, lawnmowers, chainsaws, and all kinds of different items that clearly had been recently traded. I was standing beside the Indian man who clearly was the owner or manager of the convenience store. Frantic people were pulling their vehicles up to the fuel pumps, buying gas. An SUV pulled up with an open trailer in the back. An entire family was in the vehicle, and they all looked worried. They had thrown all of the belongings into the trailer and strapped items on.
It's gone glary. Hang on, guys.
The father jumped out of the SUV and came up to the man. He said, I need a full tank of gas. He pulled out his billfold, pulled out some US dollars.
Come on,
Store manager
focus.
said, I don't take US dollars. I hope you're paying attention. Father asked, well, then what do you take? The manager says, what do you have? So the father.
I'm trying to get the flag on, guys.
Started looking to it, finding something of value that he could trade for a tank of gas. The store manager clearly was going to choose whatever he wanted in order to allow the frantic man to get some gas. That'd be a very good time to be able to pull out a silver coin, which would still have some value. I'm sure he'd much rather have a silver coin than a saw or a screw.
Okay, well, why is this guy getting tractors and that for tanks of petrol? He can't use the tractors, so what's the point?
Or something like
The
that.
body dream.
My point is, I strongly suggest that you ask Jesus to forgive your sins, come into your heart, to be your God. Then you want to ask him to show you what you need to do to get prepared. And that may be a lot of things, only he knows. And in my opinion, when it comes to food, the very best plan of all of the emergency food supplies, all of the long-term storage food, this is the best one. Because most of the other ones will cost you about $10,000 per person per year. That's right, about $10,000. But at Joseph Kitchen, you can do it for about $1,000 per person per year. That's 90% less than the rest of the guys. How are they doing it? Well, here's what you do. You get a machine package. That's all of the mechanical things that you need to make a loaf of bread. You'll get a grinder, which you then put in, and you'll get to the wheat. I'll get to that in a second. So you put the wheat in, push a button, 30 seconds later, you have flour. You put that into the bread machine along with 6 other ingredients, push a button, 2 hours, 20 minutes later, you have a nice, hot, healthy, wholesome, wonderful tasting loaf. Matter of fact, that's what I had for breakfast this morning, as I do most every morning, and lunch. Whole wheat loaf of bread. You cut that into 14 slices, give one to the children in the morning, one in the afternoon, they're good. It's not everything they need, but it's pretty close to it. Then you have to ask yourself how much food you want. You want food for 1 person a year, 2 people a year, 4 people a year, 6 people a year. I recommend you get more than what you think you need. Because the neighbors, when they smell the bread, when they see you have preparations, when you see a light, they're going to be knocking on your door with blankets and pillows in hand, and you want to be able to say, come on in. We've got food, we've got warmth or cool, and we've also got the gospel. That's the way we really want it to all happen.
I'm Leslie, owner and founder of Joseph's Kitchen, and I want to show you how to make healthy, homemade, whole wheat bread for only a few $100s a year.
At Joseph's Kitchen, our ingredients have been packaged for immediate use or long-term storage. Go to josephskitchen.com or call the number on your screen to order today. Don't get caught unprepared. Go to josephskitchen.com now.
Terry Saka, Cornerstone, AssetMetals.com. The world seems to be falling apart.
No, he's going to plug his medals. Done with that. We'll go back to the Tim Alberino one. Wow.
Ah.
You've never used an ATM die. Wow.
Wow. Mia, 凭什么的？
That same Phoenix City Councilwoman, Frances Barwood, I came to know her through some mutual contacts. We dined together, know her family. And she told me that the FBI met with the Phoenix City Council in executive session, and they were told, we need you to give us prime real estate land near downtown Phoenix so we can build a federal center to combat terrorist threats. She didn't believe the terrorist threats. Today, over 25, 26 years later, that structure is built, but it only appears to be about 5% occupied. It's high tech. And I've been told by other people, Doug knows this story, that there are biometric craft below the city of Phoenix.
So I was going to say underground base.
Yeah, but the time frame that some people will put on this, not Francis, but someone else I know, will say it's thousands of years old. I just want to get your opinion.
Sure.
Do you think that that's possible?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, as I've said, as we've talked about on previous occasions, I think that such a scenario is, what's the word I want to use? It's to some extent presumed within the biblical narrative, because we know that mankind has been in contact with advanced extraterrestrial beings since the beginning, since the origin, since Adam drew his first breath on Earth.
Yeah, let me take one more.
We call those beings angels, and there's to put it in very simple terms, there's the good guys and the bad guys, and both the good guys and the bad guys have been interfacing with mankind and have been traversing traversing the skies above our civilizations since the beginning. So would it surprise me if, let's say, the bad guys have bases and technology and even manufacturing facilities beneath the earth, within the earth?
Okay.
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
This might just bounce off you and it's irrelevant, but since we're here, my source for that information that kind of goes parallel to what Phoenix City Councilwoman Frances Barwood told me is the grandson of a Hopi elder. And he said the craft was biometric and it doesn't interact with our DNA. And that's what they're trying to figure out. That's why they built the federal center so they could access it below ground. And he knew all this. And he also knew, well, let's put it, I just want to put it back to you for a reaction to this.
Again, that doesn't, there's no reason why I would ever doubt that kind of a story, or at least the premise of that kind of a story.
Okay.
Because of as I said, because I am thoroughly convinced, based on the biblical narrative, that advanced beings have been operating on the earth for again, since the beginning, for thousands of years on the earth. What have they been doing? I mean, to put it into simple terms, we know, Christians know that there's such a thing called the kingdom of darkness, but most Christians picture these demonic beings with horns and red skin and pitchforks, and they're in this hellish realm, and this entity we call Satan is just the Lord over this hellish realm. We don't think about him being instead occupying perhaps parts of the inner earth and equipped with advanced technology, perhaps even manufacturing technology, what we would call advanced aerospace vehicles and other kinds of technology, and operating very much like a civilization beneath our feet. That's not the usual Christian contemplation, but it is certainly mine at this point in my life.
Let me ask you a question, Tim. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and powers of the air. There's really never many more verses for definition for powers of the air. What do you think that verse could potentially lead to? Do you think it could lead to the potentiality that fallen angels, or the bad guys as you would call it, have the possessed technology to create craft? And this is a conversation actually going to what you and I discussed yesterday, was when you have extrasolar events where you have these craft like Oumuamua coming into the solar system. If this is a craft, and this is what the Pentagon says it is, then where is it manufactured? How do you get the metallurgy, the technology? Who welded the damn thing together? Who bolted it together? You know, I mean, if that's even how the craft is formed.
Right. This is, you and I were having this conversation in response to reading comments on comments revolving around this story about the one that we're talking about tonight, this mothership, potential mothership, and then other stories regarding UFOs. There's the common, let's call it a recoil in the Christian community. I'm not here to bash the Christian community. I'm a part of the Christian community, and as are you guys. And I'm not here to bash Christians. I'm here to help people perhaps have a more expansive and certainly a more elastic paradigm, because as I often say, if your paradigm is not elastic, it's going to break when it's forced to bend. When it's forced to expand or flex, it's going to snap. You know, it's the principle of you don't pour new wine into old wineskins, because the new wine will burst the old wineskins. And so the reason why this is so important to me and so relevant to me as it pertains to the body of Christ, as it pertains to Christians, is because I want people to have elastic paradigms. I want them to have paradigms that can be expanded, so that they don't break when they have to deal with realities that are not being contemplated currently. And so the recoil that so many Christians have when dealing with the UFO topic, especially if you're talking about extrasolar, and let's just set aside the whole flat earth issue, because that's one of the recoils, but it's not the one I'm addressing right now. The primary recoil is in regard to the notion that there are extraterrestrials or aliens, extraterrestrial / aliens, because they're really the same thing, operating in our solar system. And again, the recoil is this perhaps it's sort of an emotion. It's emotive in nature, that people feel the need to reject that proposition, or else they are somehow thinking in terms that are extra biblical. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
When in reality the opposite is true, as I've said many times. And so people will say, for example, no, that's just a deception. For example, in regard to this particular story, that's just a deception. It's not a mothership. There are no aliens. There are only fallen angels. I've heard that so many times. No, there are no aliens. There are no extraterrestrials. There are only demons and fallen angels.
But there were also giants and satyrs and all over time.
Yes, but that very that response is what's the nice one I want to put it here?
Unenlightened.
Well, it's certainly unenlightened, but it's you're also, I mean, that response is unbiblical in my estimation. Why? Because as we all know, and as I've said ad nauseum on interview after interview, not you guys, but with a whole bunch of other people as well, angels are, by their very nature, extraterrestrial and alien to the human species.
That's true. That's true.
That's it. I mean, period. So that's the first thought. The second thought is, I just lost the second thought. Let me return to the first thought and expand on it. So we know that, the second thought, it just came back to me. I need to drink a little bit more coffee. The second thought is that it's not aliens, there's only fallen angels. Okay, but why only fallen angels? What about like the good guys? What about the good guys? Are they just riding around in chariots being pulled by flying horses like Santa Claus with the reindeer? I mean, is that all they're doing? So why do we why do we cut out the good guys out of the equation? Why can't they have a mothership? Why can't they be traversing the skies?
Let me ask you a question.
In advanced aerospace vehicles.
So what you're saying is that when you limit the enemy, okay, the enemy that is, when you limit them to only a paradigm of fallen angels, then you actually limit the capability and scope of Satan. You actually limit the capability and scope of devil, the father of lies, the one who can even appear as a minister of light, as an angel himself. And all of his little followers can, perform their own little miracles. When we say that they can only be fit into this one little square cookie cutter cutout that's been used for, at least 10, 20 years now, it's very, very popular that Nephilim, fallen angels, and aliens are all the same thing, even though the Bible really doesn't completely clarify that. You limit the capability and scope of a deception. And when we talk about it,
well, certainly.
Exactly. That was going to be my response to everything that you said, Tim.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I don't want to.
No, well, Doug and I talked about this at length, and we don't know what the Great Deception is, but this certainly could fit into that paradigm. So for people to say there's only this or that, they're assuming that Satan would never engage in a great deception. So, I mean, that's naive at best.
Right. And I think, most people are aware that at some point there's going to be a deception. I believe that the deception revolves specifically around the person of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. It's going to be in regard to an imposter Christ, an imposter Messiah. That is the primary deception. The existence. Now, let me say this clearly: the existence of extraterrestrials and or aliens is not a deception. That is not a deception. That is a foregone conclusion, according to the biblical narrative. That's a foregone conclusion.
That's true.
Extraterrestrials / aliens do exist.
I'm really paying attention to what he says here because, if he's going to say the aliens are good guys, I'm not interested.
Know that because of the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible. We know that. So I think, that's part of that expanding our paradigm that I think many of the listeners need to do right away. Is just expand your paradigm, because this is not an extra biblical concept. This is very much a biblical concept. Mm-hmm. Extraterrestrials / aliens do exist. And you can say, well, they're not from outer space or from another dimension, or they're from a spiritual realm. I don't care. I don't care about that terminology. It doesn't make a difference. It does not change my statement. It does not change the verity of this statement. Extraterrestrials / aliens do exist. They do. So their existence is not a deception. So if we find a mothership in the solar system, that's not by definition a deception, because the existence of extraterrestrials is presumed. And indeed, I would go so far as to say that the existence of extraterrestrials in possession of advanced technology is presumed within the biblical narrative. And so we should expect to find something like that out there. I mean, I would expect to find it reading the biblical narrative and seeing the kinds of things that angels do and the kind of technology that they apparently wield. I would extrapolate then that these beings come from an advanced civilization that has locality and is located somewhere other than planet Earth. Therefore, it would not surprise me if the good guys as well as the bad guys are operating advanced aerospace vehicles. And why not have a mothership? I mean, exactly as this article says, that's what we would do. That's what NASA does. I mean, if we had the capability to explore our solar system, we would have a mothership from which smaller ships would deploy. That's exactly what we would do. We would send out probes and so forth. And so I don't think any of this we should resist this automatic recoil at the notion that these might be extraterrestrials. So what if they are? Yeah. Again, I think we should expect that scenario to unfold at some point, or to become enlightened to that scenario as human beings, that there are other sentient beings in the universe, especially as Christians who are familiar with the Bible. And so right there, that alone, if you accept that what I just said, then you're not in danger of being deceived by the existence of an extraterrestrial or alien. There's nothing deceptive about the mere existence of a being. The deception is going to come when one of these beings, in my estimation, is going to proclaim himself the Messiah, the second coming of Jesus, something of this nature. It's going to revolve around the person of Christ. That's why Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" That's the question. Who is Christ? Who is Jesus of Nazareth? That is the essential question, and it is the deception is going to revolve around the imposter who calls himself Christ, makes himself into the Messiah, and who will be, by the way, to some extent, a Messiah. I believe this individual, who we call the Antichrist, is going to show up to deliver mankind and act as a Messiah, a savior to the world. And we've talked about that before. So let me just reiterate one more time. The existence of extraterrestrials, be they angels, fallen angels, be they aliens, reptilians, whatever they are, is not in and of itself a deception.
Let me ask you something when it comes to angels. The Bible quite often does not depict angels as having wings. I believe it's only the seraphim and the cherubim that have wings. So, and many times in the Bible, when the angels appear before man, they are in human form, or they are a being of just, light. But how many times do you hear of them flying in and showing themselves with wings? I mean, like I said, from what I've gathered so far in Scripture, it's only seraphim and cherubim. So then you have to ask yourself, how do they get there? How do they just appear?
Well, we know how they get there because we see it a couple of times in the narrative. They arrive in what are called the chariots of God, or the chariots of Israel, which to the Iron Age observer, they are imagining a chariot being pulled by horses, but that it's a chariot of fire, which they're also called. And so obviously they're trying to describe something which for which they have no terminology. And yes, they have words for shiny and metallic and so forth, as some scholars have pointed out, but they're not just trying to describe a shiny thing. They're trying to describe a vehicle of conveyance, not just a shiny object, a vehicle of conveyance. And so when you describe a vehicle of conveyance, you're going to use you're going to use the most obvious analogy that you have. In other words, if your most advanced form of transportation is a chariot, which it was back in the Iron Age, you're going to liken what you're seeing to some sort of a chariot, like a chariot of fire, because that's the most advanced vehicle of conveyance that you can conceive of. And so we do see angels, and I would put it in these terms. We see angels operating advanced aerospace vehicles, among other things. I mean, among other kinds of indications of technology. Now, in regard to the cherubim or the seraphim or these other entities that are seen within the context of prophecy, within the context of a perceptual experience, a visionary experience, the cherubim are clearly symbolic creatures. I do not expect to find a four-faced creature like this standing in front of the throne of God, because these creatures are very clearly symbolic. They are information. Remember that when a prophet in the Old Testament or even in the New, for example, let's think of John, who's on the island of Patmos in the Spirit on the Lord's day, when he began to have a vision. Prophets, in one case, I forget who it was. If it was, I don't remember the exact prophet, but there's a prophet in the Old Testament who his prophecy begins by him sitting by a river. He's sitting by a river, and suddenly he has a visionary experience. So when you have a vision or a dream, when you have a prophetic experience like this, your
Wow,
perception
that's
is being, and I
terrible.
don't mean to use this word negatively, it's being hijacked.
Wow.
So you are being shown things, like your perception is being manipulated in order to convey information to you. So the things that you see, and again, I don't mean to say this to paint this in a negative light at all, but
Sounds
it's
like
very
what the
much
Greys
like,
do.
well, it's very much like what the Greys do, but it's also like people who are tripping on mushrooms. The psilocybin, for example, in a mushroom is interacting with the perceptual mechanisms of your brain, and it's producing a perceptual experience. Now, if I'm in my bedroom tripping on mushrooms, and you walk into my bedroom, you're going to see me sitting there on the floor or whatever, or laying in the bed. I'm not going to be gone. I'm not going to be absent from that environment, but in my own perceptual experience, I'm gone. I'm like, who knows? I'm riding a unicorn, on a rainbow or something. I don't know. But the point is, my body is sitting there. I'm still there. I'm still present. But my perceptual faculties have been hijacked or manipulated or influenced by the psilocybin. And so I'm having this trip, right? Now, that's not to say that prophets were taking psilocybin and tripping. No, rather what was happening to them was they were receiving a coded message from God. They were receiving a message that was carefully designed, that they would write down and record, and that would be conveyed through time. And so that message was symbolic. It was symbolic. Everything that they experienced is symbolic and metaphor and analogy. It's all packaged information that they're receiving. That is the nature of a visionary experience. I mean, we all know that any kind of visionary experience, as I said, whether you're under the influence of magic mushrooms, or whether you're on a vision quest, a Native American on a vision quest, or whatever, we all understand that in those contexts, what's happening to you is happening here. It's perceptual. It's happening in your mind. Now, are there occasions in which maybe some of these people were actually taken out of their locality and taken up into heaven and shown things? Possibly. That's why Paul says that he knows a man who, whether in the body or out of the body, he knows not. In other words, he doesn't know if he was in the body or out of the body, but he had this experience. It was likely a perceptual experience. That doesn't mean that it's not an experience from God. It certainly is, because it's just like a dream, by the way. So we know that most of our dreams are nonsense, but every now and again, God will intervene in a person's dreams and deposit information, right?
True.
And that information usually comes in the form of symbolism. It comes in the form of familiar faces and voices and things from your life, or sometimes not. Sometimes it's wholly exotic experiences in the dreamscape. But nevertheless, it is divine messaging. It's information from God being delivered to you through your perceptual faculties. Again, whether it be the dream state, whether it be some sort of a visionary state, which we call, which some people refer to as a prophetic trance or something of that nature. So whatever is viewed within that context, whatever information is received in the context of a perceptual experience, must not be taken literally, because the whole objective there is to convey information. And again, it is the hijacking of your perceptual faculties in order to communicate with you. And so I said all of that to return to this idea of cherubim. The cherubim represent coded information. They need to be unpacked. There's a reason why they have these four faces, which I've said, I think, which we've talked about before. They correspond to the cardinal directions of the zodiac. You know, the face of a man, the face of an eagle, the face of a lion, and the face of an ox. Those are the four cardinal directions of the zodiac: Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo, and Tauri. Geez, what's the bull?
Taurus.
Taurus.
Yeah.
I almost said it, and then I pulled back and said, wait a minute, what am I saying? I lost the word. And Taurus. So obviously and by the way, when you talk about the zodiac, immediately what's insinuated here is time. So whatever that cherub is communicating in terms of the symbology, and it's ancient Near Eastern iconography, by the way, it's not unique to the Israelites. It comes from Mesopotamia. It's in Egypt. It's ancient Near East iconography. The cherubim. This is not an artifact of exclusively of Hebrew cosmology. Rather, it's an artifact of ancient Near Eastern cosmology in general. And it is symbolic. It's symbolic.
Tim, let me ask you a question. I actually got two questions. The first one is about the nature of prophecy and visions. In the present world we live in, I think the quantum model to explain knowing things ahead of time, having a vision, a prophecy, is explained by the fact that the brain is not a three-dimensional computer simulation. It's multidimensional. And I think it speaks to the fact that when Jesus walked on water and turned stone into bread, he said, "This I do, and you can do more." I think it has to do with harnessing from the brain extra dimensional of the three dimensions that we do. For example, if you go to the fifth dimension, it's standard theory that time stands still and you can see all things on one time strand. And I think that explains some of the prophecy, is it's a fifth dimensional reality. And then the second thing I'd like you to respond to is what struck me wrong about this story was the fact that they expect this craft to deploy the equivalent of drones to come to the earth. And I'm thinking, how would they even know this? If this is alien and foreign, how would you know what their MO is?
My response to the first question is I have no idea what other dimensions look like or how we would even conceive of them. I just really, I really don't know, because it may be that, and I do propose in my book, by the way, in the beginning of my book, Birthright, I do propose that Adam and Eve were able to perceive the dimensional totality of created order.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Tim, there was
whatever that means. Whatever that means.
Let me respond to that before you go to the second question. The Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Project, a 30-year Princeton study that studied things like, can people tell that people are staring at them from behind? Mm-hmm. And there's overwhelming evidence that's true. Mm-hmm. But it even gets more interesting. They produced listening stations to people's autonomic systems. And they found that people about 4 hours before a major catastrophic event will begin to experience collectively as groups around the world. And they had like 50 of these stations around the world where people would submit themselves to autonomic testing on a daily basis. And they would find that people's, blood pressure, respiration rate, and so forth, like a fight or flight mechanism would kick in. And this is Princeton now. This is Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, not done by psychology, interestingly enough, or physicists. It was done by engineers. And what they found was the two biggest spikes in collective autonomic response around the world was, number one, before 9/11. Number two was the Malaysian tsunami of 2004. Mm. And so that's not proof of what I'm saying about extra dimensional, but it kind of leads you to that step to say, what's the next thing? I agree. That's why I asked you the question, because I know a lot about PAIR. It was called PAIR, Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research. I actually did some at-home tutorials that they would send out before they stopped doing the study. Fascinating stuff.
Wow.
But go ahead.
I would say that I would just add that it's not just human beings. Animals are also capable of the same thing to some extent. That's why you'll see, flocks of birds take off hours before some sort of a natural disaster happens. There's obviously, we are not accessing the full potential of our perceptual capabilities. Yeah. And again, the way that I put it in my book is, I believe that Adam and Eve could not only detect, but also interact with the dimensional totality of created order. That they were designed to do that But I believe that our problem fundamentally, as the offspring, the broken down, degenerate offspring of Adam and Eve, is we have something that I call perceptual cataracts. It's precisely what Paul said.
Yeah.
We see through a glass dimly or darkly, and a glass at that time, or a mirror, we see as through a mirror dimly. And mirrors at that time were polished obsidian or some sort of a polished metal, and you only really get the silhouette, the outline of your own, for example, your own face. If you're looking into polished bronze, you'll get a cloudy reflection, but not like we're used to, not the reflection that comes from a glass mirror. You get a very cloudy reflection, and that's what Paul is referring to. So we are not perceiving the dimensional totality of the environment that we inhabit, and that's an important point. See, we are already inhabiting this dimensional totality. It's a matter of perception. We can't perceive all of it, although I do believe that we will at the resurrection. I think that will be rectified. That's why I say that the resurrection is the rectification of the human condition. And at the resurrection, all of these amazing innate abilities that Adam and Eve had are going to be restored to us through Christ at the resurrection. And we will once again perceive the dimensional totality of created order and be able to interact with it, whatever that means. And certainly, human beings have empathic capabilities. We do know in many cases, we can discern when somebody is staring at us behind us. We can discern in many cases, and there's people who have heightened discernment with this, who have heightened empathic capabilities. When somebody walks into a room and your back is turned to the door, and somebody walks into the room that's very angry or very sad, that's effusing strong emotions. There are people who can detect that instantly and turn around and indeed see that somebody very angry just walked into the door, somebody very depressed, crestfallen walked into the room. Those are empathic capabilities that we all have to some extent. Some people have them to a greater extent. By the way, Dave, you may find this interesting. I believe also, apart from these empathic capabilities, I also believe that the human species is inherently telepathic as well, but that we've lost that capability to a great extent, and that we get sort of like a broken radio. And this is what I think you might find fascinating. I believe that there are some people, and I think it's related to our genetic family line. There are some people whose let's call these our extrasensory capabilities are more activated, are more active than others. In other words, it's genetic, because it has to do with, these are innate capabilities of the human species that have degenerated over time. They've degenerated more in some family lines than in others.
The left eat their own anyway, Diane. Good riddance of Black Lives Matter.
Or rather, they've degenerated less in some family lines. And I believe that the gray aliens are choosing specifically, this is my guess, okay, so this is my hypothesis, that the grays, because we know that abductions, that it's family lines, so it's the abductions are hereditary. So if one of your parents is an abductee, you're likely an abductee. If both of your parents are abductees, you are an abductee. So, and probably if one of your parents is an abductee, you are an abductee as well, but certainly if both of them. So there's something hereditary about this, and there's several reasons that I give why I think that that's the case in my book Birthright. But I think the one that's most provocative is maybe the Greys are selecting these genetic lines, these family lines that are more attuned to these empathic and telepathic capabilities inherent in the human species. In other words, they're the least damaged. These are the least damaged genetic lines. Why? Because the Greys' control over human beings is telepathic. So
yeah,
it would.
That's true.
What it would signal is that these people, if I'm right, then the Greys are choosing these people from these particular genetic lines because these people are already because of their genetic disposition to a heightened, to these heightened extrasensory capabilities, they are also predisposed then to be more easily controlled by the Greys, to be more easily interfaced. They can interface with the Greys more easily than those of us whose extrasensory faculties are broken down, are degenerated more than these other individuals. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. But when I talked about extra dimensional abilities, I was talking about telepathy. That's exactly.
Hey, let me
what I was
intervene.
talking about.
Let me intervene because you're both right. So I'll give you a little bit of a history class for anyone who wants to know about this subject. Tim, you're talking about telepathic capabilities. We're both talking about, all three of us talking about extrasensory capabilities, things that the average person can't do. Well, the CIA actually had a study on this called Project Sunstreak. Project Sunstreak happened before MK Ultra. Now, during this time, the CIA was actually studying parapsychology, paranormal activities, and things that they could study and measure, like ESP, Dave. You and I have actually done quite a few shows on this. There was a document from China. There was state doctors from China.
Okay, I'm going to finish off with Skywatch, guys. Okay, what have we got down here?
If you met them on the street, you wouldn't even notice them. They are children, moms and dads, grandparents, homemakers, executives, pilots, and blue-collar workers. But many who share an alarming secret that has been ignored or even buried by our political leaders, law enforcement, and the media. Many of these individuals have been taken against their will, without warning and without mercy. Who or what is entering the homes of these people and removing them? And once removed, what is happening to them? Today's guest is here to explain all of this and more right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Joe Artis Horn, and I guarantee you are all in for an enormous treat. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be covering some programs that I promise you are going to change lives. Let me reveal today's special guests. He's a legendary writer, director, actor, and producer for his own incredibly viral Watcher series and Watchmen Chronicles. His Nephilim trilogy hit the CBA bestsellers list. Please welcome Mr. L.A. Marzulli. She's a prolific writer whose works have been featured in the Wisconsin Christian News and Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural Report, and co-host of the popular Through the Black podcast with the one and only Mr. Tom Dunn, Miss Vicki Anderson.
Oh, shoot, that's wrong one. Sorry, guys. Come on, Molly, up.
I promise you, in the lead up to these programs, as I spent time in prayer, I really felt like the Lord impressed upon me that the next couple of weeks that we cover these two important bodies of work that I'm going to reveal in just a moment, his message to me was there would be people. There are going to be people that hear these programs who are right now suffering this crisis of both what they believe is alien visitation, abduction, whether that is supernatural, whether that is demonic, and also those suffering what is commonly referred to as sleep paralysis. We're talking about these night terrors where people are awake but unable to move. And for them, the nightmares are very real. And I'm talking about two new bodies of work. First, the DVD by L.A. Marzulli, The Coming UFO Invasion. And I'm going to read to you the subtitle, Exposing the Dragon's Dark Secrets. We're going to be covering the material in that body of work. And also the brand new book by Vicki Joy Anderson, They Only Come Out at Night, Exposing the Dark Weapon of Sleep Paralysis. And again, I really felt like the Lord impressed upon me that there are going to be people that watch these shows over the next few weeks, and this is going to be that moment they are ripped out of the matrix and they're going to be set free. Can we just believe that together? And part of the reason that I have that confidence, ladies and gentlemen, you're very familiar with my good friend, Josh Peck, who's in house today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Evidence of what I'm describing, LA, exists in the very life of our dear brother, Josh Peck. Josh, years and years ago, briefly, talk about where you were coming out of the New Age. You were spiritually lost. You were being terrorized. You and your wife were being visited, tormented. All of the stuff that intellectuals would, without a supernatural understanding of what is going on, would most likely framework in something below their ability to accept the premise. This is just the silly stuff of crazy people. But for the millions of Americans out there that are struggling with stuff just like that, and a lot of them unwilling to talk about it for fear of backlash, or they have no comprehension of what's happening to them, they don't understand that this is spiritual.
Yeah.
They're just being tormented. They surely wouldn't talk about any of this at work. They're not going to tell anybody that they would trust about it. And when they do go to their pastors, a lot of time the pastors have no knowledge or education on the subject, tell them, watch less TV, maybe pray a little harder. But those bits of advice are not thorough enough or exhaustive enough to deal with things like opening portals unintentionally or intentionally. Josh, go back to when you were younger briefly, because I want to set LA up for this.
Yeah.
He played a huge role in not only your salvation story, but what you've done in ministry ever since.
Oh, absolutely. LA, you're my hero. About a decade ago, somewhere around there, I was a spiritual mess. I was caught up in New Age, didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was being Christian, but I really wasn't. And I had unknowingly invited demons into our house. We lived in a little trailer at the time, me and my wife, we just got married. And it was a spiritual war zone, constant attacks. Christina and I were having shared sleep paralysis.
I used to play some of John Cougar's songs. It's a Lonely Old Night and Jack and Diane. I used to play them songs on the guitar.
Events every night. We were seeing the same things. And one day it just got so bad. And, I'm supposed to be the provider. I'm supposed to be the protector of the home. And I had no idea what to do. So I prayed and I said, Lord, I need an answer. I've messed up somewhere. I've done something wrong. Please teach me. So a couple of days later, I was scrolling around on TV. Remember TiVo?
Yeah.
It was back in TiVo days.
Oh, wow.
I was scrolling around, and as a child, I had always been interested in the topic of aliens and like how it fits in the Bible. Well, I was scrolling around on TV, and I saw this show called It's Supernatural with Sid Roth, and he had a guest named L.A. Marzulli, and I was like, that's an interesting name. I want to watch this. And he's talking about aliens, Genesis 6, probably a lot of the things we're going to be talking about in these programs. Well, then he gave his testimony in that program, and he came out of New Age too, and he was able to get past that. I took a chance, sent him an email, and thank God he wrote me back. He actually called me on the phone, talked to me on the phone, and gave me a crash course in spiritual warfare, and my life has never been the same. I mean, it fixed everything.
Right.
The advice was simple. Use the name of Jesus Christ. Use the authority of Jesus. Pass this stuff out. Close the portals.
Right.
And I did. I renounced New Age, got out of that. I started watching all his presentations.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
But that's what made me want to become an author, want to do ministry like I'm doing now. And so now it's come full circle, and it's just an honor to share.
It's got to be a crazy honor to sit across from LA now on panel with him, since you saw him on television a decade ago. But LA, that really speaks to the kind of ministry work that you and Vicki both do, and how effective it really is. So ladies and gentlemen, please pay attention, because over the next few weeks we're going to be talking about more of this. And if you're one out there,
Jack and Diane, yeah, right,
that's dealing with
good song,
sleep paralysis, or you believe that you're being tormented by spiritual entities or shadow darknesses that you can't describe or understand, these programs are being designed specifically for you. First, Becoming UFO Invasion, LA, your brand new DVD. Talk to us about why you feel this is the most important film you've done with your professional ministerial career to date.
Basically, what the film does is it rips the covers off of what the end game is, what the dragon's end game. Of course, I'm talking about Satan, and it all fits in with Scripture. When you go back to Genesis 3:15, which sets up the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative, in my opinion. So Genesis 3:15 says, the offspring of the dragon will be at enmity, at war with the offspring of the woman. Proto-evangelion, the one coming from the woman, will crush the dragon's head. It's, as Gary Stearman would say, it's a seed war. And that seed war manifests 3 chapters later in Genesis 6. It then happens again with Nimrod at the Tower of Babel. It happens in Sodom and Gomorrah. It happens when the children of Israel go into the promised land, who is there? The Nephilim. The Nephilim are the progeny of the fallen angelic hosts of heaven and the women of earth. And I realize for some people that's a huge stretch, but Genesis 3:15 is always the key. If we start there, the offspring, the seed of the dragon. Remember, this is Jesus in the garden telling exactly what the game plan is. And then it's move, counter move, move, counter move. It all goes away at the cross because then he's got the keys and we pretty much know the history from there. But what happens is the dragon changes the tactics. Let me put it to you this way. So you have Genesis 3:15, which sets up Genesis 6. Go to Matthew 24. It'd be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. So what differentiates the days of Noah from any other time in history? The presence of the Nephilim are on the earth. Something is going on. The seed war is manifesting. But then go over to Daniel chapter 2, and it's incredible. I remember years ago when I read this, before knowing what I know now, what does that mean? Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to them. What does that mean? Who are they? Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. The word cleave, Jim Williamson taught me this. The word cleave is the same word that we get in the Genesis account. It means marriage. That's exactly what's going on today. And we know from the angel talking to Daniel, seal up the words in this book until the time of the end. And he gives us sort of what I call a spiritual bone. He says, men will run to and fro over the face of the earth, knowledge will increase. It's like, if we were to track that, it's flatline until Gutenberg and the printing press. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, the common man can read the Bible. It's still pretty much flatline until the present day, the modern era. And then what we see is this rise of technology. And now men and women run to and fro over the face of the earth. As I speak, as we're speaking now, planes are, circumnavigating the globe. This is our reality. Knowledge increases exponentially. Their seed is mingling with the seed of men. I remember when I got into this decades ago, and I started hearing about the abduction phenomenon. Immediately you go, whoa, this is like, and it's. I was taken aback,
right?
Because it's so dark, it's so nefarious.
There it
in the
is.
film, we bring 4 people, no collusion between any of them. They've all been taken. They've all been abducted, and that.
I'd play that, Diane, but I'll get a copyright strike and have to take the whole stream down.
Is what makes the film unique because it's the same story, and I've heard these stories before for decades. And the first time you hear one, you just kind of go, "What?" Because the people are taken and floated through the window, and of course that defies our physics. But there's a biblical passage where the angel appears to Peter, and the rest is history. The door opens by itself, the chains fall off, the guards are switched off. They can manipulate both the good guys and the bad guys. Space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy our physics.
I know that this happens, these visitations. My dad, you may recall, Ella, you've known him for decades. His sister, my aunt, Vida, when she was a very small child, would get these night terrors where she would wake up in the middle of the night, very young, 5, 6, 7 years old, and she would be screaming. Now, this is way back the late 40s, early 50s, when there was no such record of the modern alien gray that you see on posters now and on popularized T-shirts and things. This was way back when you may have had a black and white with a great big spaceman or a big octopus-looking monster. And she would describe these exactly, light bulb shaped, bulbous headed, 2 dark black eyes. This was in a home where the parents had a general understanding of God. I don't know that they were theologians, but generally had a fear and a respect that there was a God. They would rush into her bedroom in the middle of the night, and she would be regaling them of these terrorizing figures that would enter her bedroom. This was, by the way, one of the reasons that set my dad upon his course to then spend the next, 60 years of his life devoted to what this phenomenon is. But I want to ask you, what is your take? What is your take for the skeptic that would say these?
See, that song was still around when I learned to play guitar in '87. That's one of the reasons I learned to play that. His songs his chords are open. He's easy to play. Bit of rhythm, but he's easy to play.
There are people that just need medication or maybe a psychological evaluation. And I'm sure there is some of that to a degree. People have all kinds of sociopathic, schizophrenic, multiple personality disorder. There's a way to quantify some of that, but not all of them. Many of them are stand-up people. There's no benefit to them at all to make this stuff up. And that's why they don't talk about it. These are people that would be mortified to tell someone what's happening to them. What is your take on this phenomenon? Is it spiritual? Is it?
First of all, it's real. And second of all, when this happens to a person, whether it's a man or a woman, they live with shame, they live with fear. Sometimes the abductee is threatened. If you say anything, we'll kill your family. They are shown graphic pictures in their mind, particularly one, Karen, who comes on the film. She was threatened by them at 7 years old, that if you say anything, and in her mind, she saw her entire family be basically beheaded.
Oh my word.
So how do you live with that? Her sister was also being taken. And once again, they showed her in her mind this fiery car crash, everyone being burned alive, that type of thing. This is very dark, as I said earlier. It's incredibly nefarious. So these people have nowhere to turn. What is a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old? How can they possibly deal with this? They can't. And then they'll go to their parents and say, this is what's going on. Oh, you just had a bad dream, because the parents aren't ready for it. This is what's so unique about the film. We bring 4 people, as I said earlier, who have been taken, who have been abducted. The phenomenon is definitely real.
Right.
And there's no collusion between them until the very end when we bring them all in.
Oh, Jack and Diane were originally interracial couples, Diane. That's why you can't find your Jack.
The Zoom chat. It's
probably in Memphis. I shouldn't have said that.
It's visceral to hear the testimonies. It is gut-wrenching what these people have been through. The bottom line is, and it goes back right in the day, chapter 2, and this is why the subtitle, Exposing the Dragon's Dark Secrets, because what it does is it shows us that there's a breeding program. The late Chuck Missel used to say Satan is outnumbered 2 to 1. He's building an army. And that's exactly what is going on. When the women are taken, now Karen was taken when she was 5 or 6. The Greys, the Dragon's cohorts, the fallen angels are interested in certain genetic material. There's no doubt about that. And so when these people were taken, they tracked them all through their early childhood. When Karen was about 18, she was abducted. She was impregnated. She thought it was from her husband. It wasn't. Classic. This is classic. And the 3rd month of pregnancy, she's taken again, re-abducted. The baby is removed from her. And I realize some of you out there are going like, you have got to be kidding me. Genesis 3:15, the seed of a dragon will be at war, enmity with the seed of the woman. Daniel chapter 2, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. It's right there in our Bibles. But we skip over those passages and we don't understand just how incredible they are and how revealing they are. So the child is taken in the 3rd month of pregnancy, and she's in the emergency room. Did you bleed? No. They do a DNC, no fetal tissue, no heartbeat. They do an ultrasound, nothing's there. Are you sure you were pregnant? Call my OBGYN. We saw the heartbeat. I've heard this throughout my research for 30 years. The first time you hear it, it's like, whoa, it's unnerving. Getting back to the window, when a person is taken, they're paralyzed. They can't move at all. They're levitated off the bed, which defies our physics as we know it. So these entities manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy our physics. They go to the window, and every single abductee says the same thing. Are they going to open the window? And they don't open the window. The abductee, the person who's levitating, staring out the window, goes through the window. That's a physical impossibility. These people aren't imagining anything, because every single abductee that I've ever spoken to goes through the ceiling, through the wall, through the window, every single one of them.
There is no good place to go to a break during this conversation, but we're going to do it, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Millions of Americans are being terrorized at night. The homes of these victims, removing them, and once removed, what is being done to them, and for what purpose? Is it demonic activity? LA listens to first-hand accounts of these horrific encounters and offers biblical answers to this alarming problem that will help individuals suffering these terrors find freedom in Jesus Christ. Also included in this phenomenal special offer is acclaimed writer, researcher, and investigator Vicki Anderson's brand new book, They Only Come Out at Night. This riveting page-turner reveals biblical answers to the mystery surrounding Asclepians, the ancient healing temples of serpents and astral encounters, whether vampires and ancient threshold covenants are fact or fiction, who the primary targets of the entities behind sleep paralysis actually are, and whether or not you may be one of them. what your way out of the astral matrix really is, and so much more. But that's not all. You'll also receive the mind-boggling audio series, Doctrines of Devils. Listen as Stephen Vangar's interviews Doreen Virtue, world-renowned former best-selling author and teacher of the New Age, as she explains her incredible supernatural journey out of the occult and into the arms of Jesus. This over 12-hour series features bonus interviews with Dr. Chuck Missler, Dr. Thomas Horn, John McTernan, Gary Bates, and many more on the subjects of ghosts, demons, and the supernatural. This is an exclusive offer for our Skywatch television audience and holds a retail value of $85. Yours right now for your donation of only $35 plus shipping and handling. Now you and your family can understand through a biblical lens what is really behind the dark weapons of UFO visitation, alien abduction, and sleep paralysis. The UFOs and Entities Exposed special offer, available now at skywatchtvstore.com. Order now or call 1-844-750-4985.
Welcome back to Skywatch TV. I'm Joe Artis Horn. We're going to hit the ground running because we have so much we want to cover, and there's never enough time in these programs. LA, let's continue right away. We're talking about alien abduction, visitation, the phenomenon. We're sorting out the difference between what some might view as psychosomatic from others that have actually lived through this terrorizing reality with no hope and with no help. And we're digging into whether this is supernatural, whether this is demonic, whether it's chemical. And I'm just blown. Are you guys blown away?
Yeah.
In your film, The Coming UFO Invasion, you interface with a man named Dr. David Jacobs. Do you want to talk about why he's relevant to the whole project?
Decades ago, Dr. Jacobs began to delve into this very strange phenomenon where people were being taken. Sperm is taken from the men, ovum is taken from the women. There's a breeding program that's going on. There's no doubt about that. He has no biblical reference, but he knows something is happening. And after talking to dozens, scores of people over the years, his latest book is Walking Amongst Us. And so what he believes, and I do too, because I've had all sorts of stories come across my desk, the hybrids are walking.
Yeah, they're really traumatized by that January the 6th thing. But what Black Lives Matter done in the United States is 20 times worse than what happened at the Capitol building. But that's allowed. Black Lives Matter and all their wickedness was allowed. And some guys charge at the Capitol building, and they get all the bad press.
Amongst us, they are soulless.
Wow, there was that again. Wow, scared the crap out of me. Where was it? Ah, that was it there.
2023, this is the year for me. Time is on your side because Snap.
I'd be proud of that one, Diane. Don't worry about that.
Because that sets up the rest of the biblical narrative. The days of Noah, would you like the days of Noah, Son of Man returns, Genesis 6, and all goes back to that. So in Jacob's book, he's alarmed because he knows that these hybrid entities are walking amongst us. The stories that come across my desk about this are, I'll just tell you one. So this is from Norway. People listen to the show. And he's a husband and wife in Norway. Beautiful summer.
I know, it's weird, isn't it, Diane?
Very, very recent.
Scares the shit out of me. It's like the television will blow up.
Big wide aisles, everything's all stocked up, and they're just shopping. They're just minding their own business. He's at the very end of the aisle, and over here at the other end of the aisle, this woman appears out of nowhere, platinum blonde hair, and she's dressed in clothes that he's never seen before. Wearing a skirt, and there's threads in the skirt and in the top, which he's never seen anything. Well, the woman glares at him. He's never seen this woman before, with unmitigated hate. I mean, the hatred is oozing from every pore of her body, glaring at him. And he's looking at, what's going on here. And she slithers down the aisle, literally. The feet don't move. She's slithering like this as she comes to the aisle. Now, most of you will go, whoa, wait a minute, right? He's minding his own business, this guy. He's not looking for anything. This is in a supermarket, for crying out loud. His wife sees this. She's terrified. She ducks behind.
I've heard
the
this
vegetable
story
stand.
before.
This woman with the platinum blonde hair
Reptilian.
and dressed in these odd clothes is about 5 feet away. Once again, the unmitigated hate. And I realize what I'm about to say is it's adult content, that it has everything to do with going back to Genesis 3:15, the seed war, the breeding program. She glares at him and she lifts up her skirt. She's not wearing any underwear. And he immediately turns away. And that's when the Lord kicks in and he rebukes her in the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus, the Lord rebuke you. And instantly, she's at the end of the aisle. That space of 30 feet in like a half a second, bam, and she's there. And she looks at him one more time and just disappears. Now, what was that? That, in my opinion, was a modern day Nephilim. It was a hybrid. It was soulless. It's in a fixed state, as the late Russ Dizdar would say. It only knows hate and the kingdom of darkness. That's all it knows because it has no soul.
You said something about rebuking in the name of Jesus, and getting back to the story about my father and his sister Vida, and who is my aunt and very coherent. You refer back to Josh's testimony, being terrorized as a young person. There seems to be a universal theme, though. Whatever manifestation, whether it presents itself as an alien grave,
say the Lord's Prayer and you're saved,
a crackpot at a supermarket, or whatever, there tends to be this prevailing theme of using the name of Jesus to rebuke it, and that ultimate authority is what drives these things back. Is that not right, LA?
It's exactly right, because as a believer, that's what we walk in. We're walking in his authority. Yeah. If you're not a believer and you say Jesus, good luck with that, because there's no connection.
Right. So it's not just a name, it's not just a word.
It's not some magic word.
Right. We just a few minutes on the clock. That's so important, because I want to make sure that viewers catch that. In case they've tried using the name of Jesus but are not having success, what's missing? Is it a personal relationship with him? Is it because we have no power at all that correct. He does not lend to us?
Al Matthews is one of the abductees in the film. Al's testimony is absolutely visceral. He was taken at a very young age, abducted over and over again into his adulthood. The last time is when he met a hybrid woman who shapeshifted right in front of his eyes. Once again, the hybrids. So I'll just give you the quick backstory here. This woman comes from Kuwait. She's wearing these very dark glasses. This is all in the film, by the way. Al meets her and doesn't say anything about the glasses. Maybe she's got some sort of an eye problem, whatever. They're on the freight elevator going up to look at her stuff. Just the two of them. He's never met this lady before. She leans over and she goes, "They're listening, Al." And Al goes, "Who?" And he's already creeped out. And she goes, "You know the Grays. You and I were supposed to meet on the ship." He gives her phone number. And in the film, I go, mistake number one. And she calls him up.
Good night, Diane. God bless.
To see her. And he wants to find out what's going on. Why does she know so much about me? And he's being lured in. So she's there with a girlfriend. They're drinking a lot of wine. Al sits down. There's this huge deer fly on the edge of this woman with the dark glasses. Wine goblet. And Al goes, "I'll get it for you." She goes, no, I'll get it. And she reaches over and she doesn't grab the fly. Her finger and the fly sticks to her finger. And she brings it up to her mouth and she goes, doesn't eat it like this. She sucks it in from about 6 inches away. How is it possible? Then she takes off the wraparound glasses and goes over and sits on his lap. And I realize this is all edgy stuff, but we're adults here. This is what happened. This is real. I call this UFO brain fog because I stop him in the interview and I say, "Al, is this normal behavior for you?" He goes, no, it's not normal behavior. He would not allow this woman or any woman to just do that. He wouldn't do it. So she lifts up his shirt and she goes, "Ma, you're well preserved." And she leans over to kiss him and Al pushes her away. The eyes shapeshift into like these yellowish deals and she lets out the most evil laugh you've ever heard in your life. Al flees, goes to Gordy Tong's house. They get me on the phone. We pray over Al. To this point, he's not a Christian. 2 weeks later, he becomes born again and spirit-filled. No more abductions. Now he counsels other people. But his testimony is absolutely visceral.
I've heard that
Joe
testimony
Jordan
before.
And David Ruffino, who also have a deliverance ministry, have shared LA story after story, very much like the one that you just shared, where people are experiencing these events that would be very hard to take seriously if save not for a supernatural component. But the bottom line is when the name of Jesus is presented by a person who actually has authority in Christ, universally these things begin to stop. With just a few moments on the clock, Ellie, what impacted you the most while making this film?
I think what really got to me was when, it's one thing if you're just interviewing one person, but we have 4 people. All of them have been taken. The 2 women have had lost their children, the men's sperm taken from them. So this goes back, once again, to wrap it up. It goes back into Daniel chapter 2. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men. They will not cleave to them. There is a breeding program which is going on. It's all biblical based, and that's why the subtitle is Exposing the Dragon's Dark Secrets, because that is what we do in the film.
I think we're going to have LA again next week.
Okay, guys, God bless. See you tomorrow.
Be enough time to do it all.
Lights from around the world, tomorrow in politics.
Next week to continue discussing the abduction phenomenon and explain how all of this fits into